Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 291. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun, in his Sega hat. How are you today, my friend? Good to see you.
I'm doing well, just chilling. It's a very nonchalant kind of day for me right now,
Fair enough.
Which is good.
It's early yet for you, so.
Yeah, it's just begun.
So things haven't yet developed for you in one way or the other. Good to see you here today, my friend. We missed you on Sacred Symbols plus Sacred Symbols Cross-Defining Duke.
Yeah.
The other day you were missed.
Yeah, that was a wild morning.
Did you talk about any of that at all, or should we just not go on
I don't want to get into it. It's just some medical stuff.
His dick fell off.
Yeah, my dick fell off.
He woke up and his dick was 10 times smaller than it usually is, and he had no idea what was going on.
It was deeply shocking. So,
well, good to have you back, my friend. Dustin Furman, executive producer. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
Doing just fine. I did some walking on the treadmill today, Colin.
Oh, good.
I'm trying to, get those steps in because I realized that is what I was missing. I was doing the dieting right, kind of stalling out. I was like, man, probably it's because I don't move anywhere as much as a normal person. In fact, much, much below that. That's what happens when you work from home. So I was like, I gotta step it up. Yeah. So I watched some anime, watched some Final Fantasy VII remake theory videos. The usual stuff.
How long were you on that? So you have one in your house?
Yeah, it's actually right under the desk. I'm not standing on it. It's one of those ones I can kind of pull out. I'm the pull out.
You know all
king,
about pulling out.
So yeah, absolutely. So, but yeah, I did 40 minutes, actually closer to 45 this morning.
Nice. Good for you.
So
get your wind up there.
Crazy. But I'm worried. Is it going to make me feel tired walking 45 minutes at some point? Yes, it will come to bite me, but coffee ready. I feel energized right now.
That's why I work out. I always feel energized when I work out too. And then I sleep better at night. You'll get your wind ultimately. I have great wind. There was this thing on TikTok, but it was circulating on Twitter where it's like a line with a circle on it. And it's like a little bar filling up. And it says, if you can hold your breath without exhaling, just holding it from this to this, your lungs are in good shape. And I could probably do it twice as long as that. But and people be like, oh, well, you smoke weed and stuff. Well, I'm like, first of all, I don't think weed's that bad for your lungs, because when I smoke a cigarette once in a while, I like cough like I've never smoked a cigarette before. So I think that the harshness is a lot less, but the working out will give you your lungs, and then you'll be able to do more and better things. Maybe you'll start running.
So if I work out, can I start smoking cigarettes without guilt?
I think so.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Dude, old footage of like the NFL and the MLB, especially in like the 60s and 70s when dudes were just smoking cigarettes like in the bullpen and in the dugout. Love that shit.
Dude, smoking, it's it makes you smell bad. It's horrible for your health. It really is vile in so many ways, but man, I love it at the same time. When was the last time I smoked? Probably last year at a bar. But I've been thinking about it. I'm like, man, that's good shit. But not really. Not all the time.
Yeah, I never had the urge to smoke cigarettes as like a thing. So but it's certainly fun to do in Vegas. Cigarillos are great to smoke. And all
there's no detriment.
Right. No consequences.
Oh, no
consequence. You could just go work out and regrow your lungs. Mm-hmm. It's all good.
AI will make a new set of lungs for you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's good to be here with you guys today, my friends. It's a little bit of an ominous day because, and we'll get into it later, but woke up to 2,000 people laid off at Xbox. So I had to readjust our story because the top story was already the layoffs. And I had to go back and do all the math again and add, unfortunately, these numbers to a lengthy write-up. We'll get to that later. But it's good to be here with everyone. Nonetheless, here on Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. It feels like the quiet before the storm in some sense. I mean, The Last of Us has already come out. The Last of Us Part 2 remastered. But we have Grand Blue Fantasy coming. Mm-hmm. There was a new Pacific Drive preview or like a video that went up. That game looks so good, dude. I mean, I think that game looks so good. I'm really, really surprised that that's not getting a little bit more play, but maybe closer to when it comes out. And we have Rise of the Ronin on the horizon, Foam Stars, Helldivers 2. Stellar Blade probably in the spring. Looking pretty good, actually, I think, but not so much with the first party. Not right now. Rumors also percolating of a State of Play, perhaps in the next couple of weeks, but we'll talk about that in a little while. Nonetheless, it's good to be here with everyone out there. Thank you again for tuning in the Sacred Symbols of PlayStation podcast, our weekly PlayStation podcast here on Last Stand Media, amongst our other shows. It is our flagship. You can get it 3 days early and ad-free over on Patreon. Patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate your support. Early access to all of our shows, including Sacred Symbols, ad-free access to all of our shows, including Sacred Symbols, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show, Discord access. You can get an RSS feed for your podcast app. You can even get our shows early on Spotify and so much more. Sacred Symbols Plus, another perk, our weekly supplement once a week for Sacred Symbols. Just put up Sacred Symbols Cross-Defining Duke for the first time this year. It's our crossover episode with our Xbox podcast. We try to do those once a month or so, but I don't think we've done one since November because everyone's pretty busy. So that was a great almost 3-hour conversation about a whole litany of topics. Definitely check that out. Our Insomniac Leak Breakdown, extensive, probably one of the most extensive you'll see, is on YouTube for free for everyone. We did our fantasy critic picks. The JRPG boys convened for an episode. I recorded an episode yesterday. I'm loath to tell everyone who it's with because I want it to be a surprise, but it's in the can, and it is with who I would describe as our most requested guest.
Oh.
Would you think that was true, Dustin?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah, I think you could argue for a few, but it's definitely in the realm.
Well, I was saying originally that we had Ken on. Jaffe's like one of us now. Neil's not going to be on the show. Like it's just not going to be possible through Sony PR. So like there's just certain people that have either already been on that were heavily requested or that we simply can't get. And I think that this person is not a developer, but is someone that that people have really requested. And our conversation about PlayStation was awesome. People are going to love it. We broke down each and every studio one by one together.
Yeah. Jeb Bush, right?
Yeah.
Please clap.
Oh, so I ruined it. Sorry.
Please clap.
Yeah. Oh no, you spoiled it.
I spoil.
All right. What if it was like someone really like Carrie Lake? That woman's a little crazy, huh? She's
Carrie Lake?
Yeah.
What is that?
You know her?
Who is that?
She ran for the governor of Arizona last time and lost, but she's like probably Trump's most hardcore surrogate. And
really? I've never heard her name ever.
Oh, dude. She's huge in the MAGA world. And
wow.
She just a couple of days ago, she was in the news because she had a meeting with the head of the Republican Party in Arizona, who apparently, I didn't really listen to it, but apparently kind of like was like tried to bribe her not to run. And then he ended up resigning. So,
oh man.
Late America, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
We have a new nullification crisis going on too on the border. All the southern states are like, we're just not letting the military in and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if we're going to be recording them anymore, these episodes.
Yeah.
By the way, just a quick aside. I've been watching a show on Apple TV, Invasion. Have you guys seen this show?
No.
Invasion. It can mean only one thing. Invasion. That's my episode 1 impression, but it's about an alien invasion of Earth. It's a little slow, but it's pretty cool because it's through the eyes like of a bunch of people that don't know each other and will probably never know each other, like a military guy stranded in Afghanistan, a family on Long Island, like a scientist in Japan.
Oh, so it's like almost like an anthology, but like it's in the same kind of it's not completely disconnected.
Right, exactly. Like they're all kind of experiencing the same thing, but they don't know each other or whatever. There's like a group of kids in the UK and stuff. We watched the first 3 episodes. I'm like, this is kind of slow and boring. And then we watched 2 more episodes last night, and it started to kick up a little bit. So interested to see where that goes, because the Apple TV, I don't know if it's still true, but you can get that for 6 months for free. I think if you have PlayStation Plus, you have to look into that. We talked about it on the show at the time. Yeah, but it's a nice little thing to pick up. I don't know where that came from or why I said that. Merch. laststandmedia.store. We appreciate you. Stickers, shirts, sweatshirts, hats, and so on and so forth if you want to show your support. And please leave us nice reviews on podcast services. You can leave a comment on the video. You can follow us on YouTube and so on and so forth. Social media, we have been posting more things now, so you can follow Last Stand Media on Twitter. We got our Instagram name somehow, so that's cool. and exciting. I don't know why we didn't squat on it. We must have tried to, and it must have been taken or something. Because I feel like we were actually pretty good about squatting on everything, but
yeah. The thing I'm upset about missing out on is the YouTube handle. I've contacted YouTube multiple times. I told them we had the copyright. They don't care.
Yeah,
so that's why our name has a dash in it on YouTube.
That's okay.
It's unfortunate.
It doesn't matter because no one's really typing it in anyway. So it's like I don't really care about that. But well, remember that there was that political show that went live like last year for a couple episodes, and they were calling themselves Last Stand Media, and I emailed them. I'm like, "Are you really doing this?" Yeah. And they were actually really nice. I'm like, "No, I don't think so. Sorry." That's why you got to get those trademarks. Our trademark for we have the trademark for punching up, sacred symbols, knockback, last stand. The one for summon sign is pending. Our lawyer said that there are so many trademark applications now that it takes like 8 to 10 months for them to even clear it. So we'll hear for
Jesus Christ.
I just also had to keep your trademarks, you have to show that you're using them in commerce. So I just did that yesterday with our lawyers too, to keep the sacred symbols and knockback and all the rest trademarks. So don't fuck around because I'm going to come and get you if you do. Shelby Thompson wrote in. It's one of your perks, of course, on Patreon. I put up a post in the news feed. You respond. I pick out various inquiries. Yo, sacred dudes, my partner got me into your podcast about 6 months ago. Our weeks now consist of rehashing our favorite podcast moments, and I find myself calling him immediately when I get to a particularly interesting or hilarious part. Your episode discussing Lies of P, where you so rudely spoiled the ending, inspired me to tackle my first Souls-like. I'm pleased to say that I platinumed it this week. Thanks for bringing couples closer together, and we're excited to see you in New York City. Thank you, Shelby, for writing in. We're bringing people together.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel about the term partner? It always implies it implies you're gay, right? I mean, that's what always implied to me. But then Ramon uses it, and he's with a woman, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I feel like we're kind of mixing things up a little bit because that was always a way to telegraph, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you didn't have to have that conversation, or you didn't know, whatever the case. I have pretty good gaydar, but once in a while you don't know,
Yeah. It's definitely that's. I don't know how I feel about it because now it doesn't tell me anything. You know what I mean? It kind of doesn't tell me a damn thing about the person now. I don't know.
I heard once that the modern, when it's not necessarily implied gay, is that it's, we're more serious than boyfriend and girlfriend, or we've been together long enough that it's serious. So we're partners, and boyfriend girlfriend is a more immature term.
Is it? Is that like more casual?
That's how it was explained to me. I'm not saying that that's the truth, but that's what someone said to me once. So
yeah, I kind of feel that in a sense. Like, can you really be 50 years old and have a boyfriend?
I guess.
Can you really?
Well, I think you could. I think certain people could pull it off. I think, but
like, this is I'm Carol and this is my boyfriend Fred, but you're like a 52-year-old accountant or something. I don't know.
Well, like if somebody gets like divorced when they're like 60, are they going to be like dating a person for like a month and be like, this is my partner?
Yeah, I don't know what that would be either, because I think both my parents got remarried, and I think my dad still calls his wife his partner, but he's weird. Like my dad's really weird.
Strange man.
Sounds like a freak.
He'll be at the New York City show, no doubt. Yeah. Oh yeah. He's a freak show. No, he's my dad, Mike always says, like, I got my real dry personality, like the humor from my dad completely. Very
right.
If I can make my dad actually bust it out and laugh, I'm like so proud of myself, because he's very funny, but he's very staid. He thinks things are funny, like waking up and farting really loud in the bathroom while everyone's like outside. Like he does. He likes hilarious. He likes to say, isn't it? I love morning farts.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's been laying out. You stand up, you're peeing, and you let it go.
I'm getting a feeling that Chris doesn't find farts funny by the reaction I'm seeing.
That's not funny.
It's I get it. Like it's you can only. Comedy in general is like a joke is only funny so many times before you can just kind of be like, oh, okay, I appreciate it.
Right.
But like, I'm 30 years old. Like I've seen every kind of fart there is. Like it's not.
Age hasn't affected me on that.
Yeah, me neither. I feel like it's all situational too. Like we had workers in our house doing something, some time ago, and I kind of just am so used to being alone or just with Micah that I just ripped the biggest fart like ever. Like everyone in the house definitely heard it, and then I had to make it an awkward situation for everyone. you know?
Mm.
So there's still a way to extract both fear and fun out of a fart.
Fear and fun.
Yeah.
Fear and fun. Absolutely.
That's what I think. Anyway.
All right. That is valid.
Shelby, thank you for writing in. Congratulations on your Lies of P Platinum, and we will see you in New York City. Now, New York City, for those that don't know. So when this goes live, you'll have an hour before the tickets go on sale for our New York City show. So most of you will only hear this after they're already live. Here's the details for those that need a reminder. We're convening in New York City, in Manhattan, in Chelsea on Sunday, March 24th at 7 o'clock. And it will run till about 10 o'clock at night. Patrons will be able to buy tickets on Patreon. Well, via Patreon, I should say. January 26th at 1 p.m. So that's an hour from when this podcast went live. We will post, I think Ben will do it, but Ben will post something or whatever. And then there'll be a ticket site, tinyurl.com/sacred300. And there will be a password that you have to put in. This is to stop normies from getting access to tickets first and only patrons. So you'll put that in and then you'll be able to buy your tickets to the show. We're really excited about this. You can do merch pre-orders as well. You can get VIP tickets, which are very limited if you want to meet us and hang out before the show for a little while, and so on and so forth. Everyone will be there in the family except for Jaffe, Maddie, and Locke. I think that's it. So we'll all be there. Cog will be there. Dagan will be there. Gene will be there. Micah will be there. Brad will be there. Ben will be there. I think that's everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm like a old 17th century farmer has like a family of 14 children that I have only to work the farm. I don't love them,
right.
you know?
Yeah, they're employees.
And then you have to kind of like recollect their names.
You have to pretend though.
Right.
You got to at least remember the name.
Right.
Yeah. 13.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's like 7 in Seinfeld.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Take a drink.
Take a shot.
Take a shot. Oh, Colin's hitting the vape. Take a shot. Good night.
You're already done. 17 minutes in.
Murdered.
All right, we're excited to be there. Everyone will be able to buy tickets, whatever's left over, and I'm sure there'll be some leftovers, January 29th at 1 p.m. Just go to patreon.com/lastdaymedia. It'll all be there. Whether or not you're a patron, you'll be able to see the ultimate post that we'll make live for everyone. We're looking forward to seeing everybody in New York City. I haven't been inside New York City in some time. When is the last time I even went to New York City? I have no fucking idea. I think 2017 is probably the last time I went to New York City, actually. And I remember it because I went and visited my dad. I went to meet my dad and my brother at a bar in Manhattan, and I left. I used to wear glasses. I had a period of no glasses, then I had a period of glasses, and now I'm back in my period of no glasses. But the reason that I don't really wear glasses anymore is because I left my favorite pair of glasses in a cab in New York City during that trip, and so I could never go back. It was too painful.
Oh.
You know, it was too painful.
That's pretty rough.
I loved them. And then I went back to the place. So I actually tried to track them down. I called the place in San Francisco I got them at. They're like, oh, they don't make these anymore. And shit. I was like, I was like, I'm not wearing glasses anymore. Fuck it.
Were they prescription glasses?
Yeah, they were. But my prescriptions are very weak. They're negative 0.5.
Yeah. Who steals prescription glasses?
I just left him there. And the cabbie was probably like, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah, free
These
glasses?
are like a $500 pair of glasses. You know? I did get a lot of wear out of them. Like I wore them well beyond, because they were like 3 glasses old, but I just still kept wearing them because I didn't like the new ones as much. But the reason that I was wearing glasses in California at the end of the day was because I had transition lenses and they just acted as sunglasses after a while. And then,
I mean, they say they do. They, you know, they're never quite as dark as a proper pair of shades. You know, there's always it's like a half measure, kind of, where it's like these aren't really as satisfying as wearing shades. They don't block out enough. I find.
No, I just like wearing sunglasses. I just wear I get them on like Amazon. They're like $30 sunglasses. I just buy a bunch of them.
Yeah, I have prescription shades.
Nice. Yeah, you would need them. That makes sense. Yeah, for me, I just whatever. Sacred Symbols is sponsored by BetterHelp, the accessible, affordable, and convenient alternative to in-person therapy. Learn more now at betterhelp.com/symbols and start your therapy journey today. In a world full of trials and tribulations, there's one thing that's certain. Pretty much everyone can relate. Whether you're dealing with problems in a relationship or friendship, having issues at work, or simply feeling glum and blue, there's honestly nothing very new to the human experience. This is what makes therapy such a useful tool. By speaking to someone who knows how to listen to you and is trained to help you find solutions to what ails you, you don't only get an outside perspective, but a viable way forward too. The problem with therapy, however, is that it's wildly inaccessible to far too many people. Maybe your health insurance isn't the best, or you don't have a local provider, or maybe you even lack transportation. Whatever stops you from seeing a therapist in person, know that my friends at BetterHelp have engineered their entire service around access. This means that you conduct your sessions with a certified therapist via video, audio, or even just text. Not going into an office means you don't have to go anywhere to get help, a huge win in and of itself. But it also means that service is more affordable, and that savings is passed on to you. I'm 39 now, and I first saw a therapist when I was like 7 or 8, but the honest truth is, while I found it helpful at various points in my life, it wasn't until I was older that I truly opened my heart and mind to its potential, and I literally saw my guy here in Virginia just yesterday from when I'm recording this ad. Embracing this reality of talking through my problems has only been constructive for me. The same can be said for you too, if only you're willing to take the first step. It's time for you to become your own soulmate, whether you're looking for one or not. Visit betterhelp.com/symbols today. That's BetterHelp.com/SYMBOLS to get 10% off your first month of therapy sessions. Again, that's betterhelp.com/symbols for remote therapy that can help guide you towards a constructive and positive resolution to mental burdens as common as being human itself. All right, let's get into topics of discussion, stretch our legs a little bit, see what's going on with everyone. Alex Ronaldo wrote in, said, "Hey, sacred gentlemen, can I get some good luck wishes this Friday? At the time of the show airing, I will be in an interview for vet school. I would appreciate the encouragement. Sacred Symbols and its sister shows have been my go-to listening for every 10-hour shift I spend cleaning up and feeding animals. Keep making the best gaming podcast out there and have a good week before the JRPG flood comes in." Alex, I'm putting on my hands, sending my mana energy to the heavens. Yeah. We're wishing you the very best.
You're doing a spirit bomb.
Yeah, the spirit.
Chris
and I having weeb-like sensibilities shared.
Yeah, it's very rare. It's a very rare instance.
What is that? The spirit. What does that mean?
It's Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z.
To
like, take out Frieza.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, we all have to do it though.
Yeah, we all have to. You know.
Is that what that was called? I don't remember that being called that.
Spirit Bomb.
Well, it's called a bunch of different. It's called Spirit Bomb in the English dub. I know that. I think it's
been
like
many years. I mean, it's been many years.
Genki Dama, sure. I think is what it's called in in Japanese or something. Yeah. I only know that because that's what the track is. That's what the name of the song is on when you look it up on YouTube, and it's like, ooh, this is cool. But yeah, man, good luck. Vets are interesting to me because I feel like in some ways it's way harder than being a doctor, because I feel like you have to like how do you can you give CPR to like a parrot? You know, how do you
find out when you're in vet school? You know? I agree. It's like you have to work on it's like cats, dogs, rabbits, turtles, amphibians. It's like, it's a lot to know. It's a lot of anatomy to know. Much lower though, you know, and no offense to any, but the stakes are so much lower. I feel like you have to master the human body, and the stakes are really high when you're a doctor. You know,
that is you are right. Yeah. If you lose your snake at the vet, it's probably not going to be a
right. You know, I don't want to trivialize cats and dogs, but at some point I'm going to trivialize an animal, right? Like if you have a pet lizard and it dies, it's like, well, you didn't really ever know the lizard. The lizard never really even knew you.
Yeah, the lizard. In fact, the lizard probably does know you and just doesn't care because it's built to be unfeeling and cold.
That's right.
But
literally,
yeah. I saw this wild video of like an alligator frozen in a lake.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
And its nose is just like out of the water because they just like they understand. Like they're just like, oh, I guess I'm just gonna be frozen in this lake. Better put my nose out of the water so I can breathe.
Cold-blooded.
That's fucking so crazy to me.
It is. It's nature is a wild and uncanny, literally wild and uncanny thing.
Yeah.
I feel like cats and dogs, you want to, you know, like if I go to a dog surgeon, I want to make sure that he went to school for dog surgery, not a more generalized mammalian surgery. You know?
Right.
I don't know. You're right though. There is something to that about knowing all of those things. Reminds me of the doctor in the farmer, I think in The Walking Dead, who was a vet, but he kind of he knows much more obviously than everyone else. So he's kind of compelled into the role of doctor, which is kind of interesting in and of itself.
Although you could argue you could learn a lot quicker because you could just run through those fucking things. Just cut up a cow wrong and you're like, all right, let's move on to get another cow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how it goes.
Turn this into my fucking lunch, please.
As opposed to people back in the day, like literally grave robbing largely comes from people needing bodies to work on, to study.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't ever think about that or know that. They weren't stealing bodies for any other reason than to sell them to like doctors that would secretly dissect them.
Yeah, like bones and shit. Yeah, because you're not getting like usable organs out of that, especially back then.
Right, like they're doing this in the 18th
yeah.
century, and they're just trying to figure out like what the fuck they're doing. It's actually kind of cool that they did that. Benjamin Franklin was one. Jaffe, I think, brought this up recently. It's true. Like Benjamin Franklin was one of those guys that used to like deal in the selling of bodies and stuff like that.
Really, he was a grave robber?
Well, I think he was like one of the facilitate, like a kind of one of the money men.
Something about that's weird.
I don't think it was like I also don't know that he was robbing graves. I think that they were just disappearing bodies from like hospital morgues and stuff like that. But you'd have to go read more about that.
He's a bit of a Frankensteinian figure then, right? He's got the stealing bodies. He's got like the lightning on the string.
Oh, dude, he's a total he is the original American Renaissance man. He's like one of the famous pen names, like Silence Dogood and all the random shit that they used to write under pen names back in the day. I mean, even though he didn't write them, but the Federalist Papers are all written by pen name. Only after everyone was dead did they even figure out who wrote what. I love that shit. That a lot of them were just writing things in newspapers with just pen names, very anonymously. It's too bad we don't really do stuff like that anymore. You know.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was done to manipulate politics without making it seem like you were manipulating politics. So it's propaganda, but American propaganda.
They were the earliest Redditors.
Oh my God, dude, he would have been, I guarantee you, Benjamin Franklin would have been all over Reddit. No doubt.
Oh yeah, easily.
There's no doubt about it. Yeah. He's I recommend highly the Walter Isaacson biography of him. It's great. It's so interesting. Especially because he like had a wife and basically they were in love with each other, I guess, but he just left twice and went to England and just never talked to her basically. And then just came back like after 10 years or something like that.
Banged his heart out while I was there too, right?
That's the other thing and I don't know if Walter Isaacson was kind of trying to like pull his punches or whatever. He's a pretty honest guy, I think, and he's a great biographer. But what he suggests is that Benjamin Franklin's kind of like amorous nature was flirtation, but never sexual. And I'm like, really? Because that's kind of boring. Like the assumption was that he was just having sex with so many different people in France and England. Like, well, he was up there. I don't know if you guys saw John Adams, the HBO show. It's awesome. It's based on the McCullough biography of John Adams from the turn of the century. I have a signed copy of it actually, because he was at the Mass Historical Society when I was an intern there.
John Adams?
No, McCullough, David McCullough. But John Adams, I was going through John Adams' papers though, and which was cool as fuck. But there's a scene in that where Benjamin Franklin is in a bathtub with like a French woman playing chess. And like with the chess over the thing or whatever. And I'm like, that's so fucking dope. Like, cause that's obviously like a story that someone relayed, that they like walked in on him and he's like playing chess with like some hot French chick, but they're just in a bathtub. I'm like, what were you doing over there, dude? You know, he would wear his coonskin cap everywhere he went to look real rustic and American. Shout out to Benjamin Franklin. Great American. Up there with, who would be the great Americans? You know? Dwight Eisenhower.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no idea. Michael Jackson.
You know.
Michael Jackson, 1973 to 1988.
Yeah. You want to be very, very distinct with that. Yeah.
I was watching that. I was watching an interview recently with Michael Jackson and Oprah. I don't know why I was watching it, but when he was asked for the first time about his skin color.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of sad because I don't really know what the exact story is, but I think a lot of people were like, you're bleaching your skin. Yeah.
Yeah.
And his whole argument was like, that's not even a thing. I don't know if it is or isn't. I feel like it probably is, but
might be a thing now.
Yeah. Poor Michael.
Yeah,
but then also,
wasn't.
Who knows what he did.
I don't know. That guy was abused to hell though. Also, like, I don't know. He's an interesting figure because like I feel like if that exact scenario were to happen with like pretty much anybody else, it would be a lot more, like there would be a lot more certainty with how people feel about him as opposed to like the kind of ambiguity that people feel about Michael Jackson.
It's a great word for it.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Because I don't really know where I stand either. After I saw, what was it, Leaving Neverland or whatever?
Yeah.
That documentary, I was like, oh shit, this dude's dead to rights. But then all of this other shit came out and I'm like, I don't know, man. We're never going to know. You know? We're never really going to know.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me I still listen to some of those records, you know?
Yeah,
I do.
I just kind of immediately, the thing for me is like I never had a connection to Michael Jackson really ever. You know, like his music was like everywhere, but it was everywhere to the point where it's like I've heard enough of this. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
I
Like
understand that.
I've heard bad like a million times. Like it doesn't like I skip it if it comes on now, like or beat it or you know, any of these.
Bro.
Which actually, like, it kind of makes the comparison. I know a lot of people, like modern people, we're really getting off on a tangent here, but
Who cares?
I know a lot of modern people compare like the stardom and the sheer stratospheric rise in popularity of like Taylor Swift and her impact on pop culture to Michael Jackson. A lot of people are like, that's not, they're not really equivalent. I look at it and I kind of think, kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
Like I don't really see a problem with that comparison really at all.
Yeah, me neither. And I think it's easy with MJ for me to just limit it to Thriller and Bad, those records. He has records before that, and then obviously like Dangerous comes out after that, History, and I don't give a shit about those records. Like Black and White and all those songs, I'm like, nah.
Yeah.
But
that's
stuff
a great
like
song.
Human Nature and Beat It, there's like so many good songs. Even kind of there's no song that's a deep cut on Thriller because they're basically all singles, but
Yeah, they're all
on
hits.
Bad, there's like a few, you know, obviously like Smooth Criminals on there. Although, let's be real, the Alien Ant Farm cover of Smooth Criminals better than the original. Straight up. And we all know it. Everyone knows that.
It's
Everyone
great.
knows that.
It's
It's
cool.
great.
It's neat. It's a
And
neat
that
little
wasn't-
song.
It's funny. I've seen Alien Ant Farm a few times, and they never played that song when I've seen them. I don't know why.
Do they
like,
resent it because it made them a song that wasn't theirs made them famous?
It could be because I really like them. Actually, especially their first two records, Anthology and Truant, are fucking excellent records. Excellent rock records. They're so underrated, and I feel that was it, that song stopped them from being taken seriously, although it wasn't their first single. Their first single was that song Movies, which is another great song. But then that was the song I got into them over. But yeah, it was tough being an Alien Ant Farm fan. I last saw them in college, I think, just because people are like, oh, yeah, Smooth Criminal. I'm like, yeah, but there's so much more. They're so good. They're so good. They really are.
Yeah,
I highly, dude, listen to, if anyone out there hasn't listened to the album Anthology, just put on the song Courage, the first song. Tell me that song doesn't fucking rock. Please.
Yeah, shout out to Alien Ant Farm.
Yeah.
You know, shout out to Michael Jackson too, depending
on era and situation.
Very situational
Right,
shout out
right.
to Michael Jackson. He's no Nickelback, but you know,
No.
he's still pretty good.
Never made it as one man.
I saw this video recently of some guy losing his mind where he's narrating to the camera where he's like, to the person who made a meme out of hating Nickelback, like, bravo. Because you convinced an entire generation of people to lie to themselves.
It is weird, right? Like they are a weird punching bag, because I'm like, that what was it called? Silver Side Up or something like that? Was that record with How You Remind Me on it? And I was like, that a lot of people listened to that record back in the day, and I was like, it's very generic butt rock, but it's good. There's some good stuff that they do. Yeah.
It's not
How
even
You
remotely
Remind Me is
bad.
a good song. Yeah.
Yeah. How people treat Nickelback is how I feel like people should treat Imagine Dragons.
Right. By the way, did you guys see that twisted sizzle reel in quotes that someone made for our show?
Yeah.
That was some funny.
Yeah.
That was some funny shit.
It
Different
was
than
good.
Lockmore because it's much less ethereal and much more, I don't know, TikTok. Maybe you'd want to describe it, something like that. Very funny. Whoever did that, very, very funny. All right. Jacob Spellman wrote in and said, Colin, I have been having an existential crisis all week, thanks to your pithy explanation as to why one should not use the double space at the start of a new sentence after a period, and then uses a double space. Unfortunately, being born in 1988, there is nothing that can be done at this point in my life to break years of muscle memory. Hearing that I don't need the double space unless using a typewriter will not remedy my condition. The damage is done. I will just have to live out the rest of my life punctuating every sentence I write with shame and regret. Thank you. Jacob, I'm 4 years older than you. I was born in 1984. Why am I able to not double space and you have to double space? Stop double spacing. Please stop it. It's not necessary anymore. I am telling you, it had to do with old typeface. I am telling you that the computer generation has stopped us from needing it. I would notice that if again, I'm just trying to stop people from making, especially people that are in the email class, let's say in quotes, where they go to work at fucking, Oracle and they have to send an email every 5 minutes to people. You got to tighten it up. Tighten it up.
Yeah.
Don't look like a fucking idiot, you know?
Jacob, tighten it up. Thank you for writing in. Saul Nolasco wrote in, said, "Good day, gentlemen. I just want to know, where in the world do all of these LSM fans live that always run into each other? I constantly wear my LSM shirts, Sacred and Constellation. I have a couple of Sacred Symbol stickers on my water bottles, and not once has anyone approached me. I live in the Los Angeles area, so I would assume that someone would have mentioned something by now. Anyway, loving all the content. I'll catch you guys when you come down to San Diego." Thank you, Saul, for writing in. I only got a little taste of LA for 3 years. I'll just say that the taste level in LA, dubious. Probably not a lot of Sacred Symbols listeners in the LA area. I'm only kidding. We have probably more listeners in the LA area than almost any other place because of how many people live there. But have you considered Saul being an evangelist like Brandon Lowe? He says, "Hello, CDC. This is a long overdue appreciation post for my favorite podcaster, Colin. I work as a mailman, and for the past 10 years, from Beyond to Sacred Symbols, you've kept me company and made the long days on my route so much more enjoyable. I also just got one of our new employees into Sacred Symbols, and we talk about the pod on the daily. Shout out to Dylan Hoover. Cheers to many more years of great content." Have you ever considered evangelizing, Saul? Brandon's over here making fans. Now he says he got the employees into SS now.
Whoa. Be careful.
But
We
Saul,
would
you're
never want to
not.
be associated with Summon Sign. Or confused.
I don't want anyone to be confused with any of this. Be like Brandon, Saul, and make a fan, and then you'll have someone to talk to about it.
Yeah.
It's
You got to do your
disgraceful.
proselytizing, you
Mhm.
know?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Everyone's proselytizing today. Why not you too?
You got to go on the street corner. Like there's always one character in every open world game that's like proselytizing on the corner. Like there's that guy in Cyberpunk and that guy in Skyrim. Like you got to be that guy for us,
Right.
you know?
Right. Someone's got to do it. Saul, stay
Hand up.
well. Brandon, congratulations on making a new fan who is named Dylan Hoover. By the way, what's going on with the mail, Brandon? I mailed things out. What was said on the Discord yesterday? Did you guys see this?
Oh, about the bonuses. Maddie just got his bonus.
Let's talk a little bit about something that happened, okay? Because I don't think I've caught everyone up on this. I'm a stationary person. I don't mean stationary like I stay in place, although that's true too. I'm like a stationary person where I buy like really nice envelopes from Paper Source, and I like to write on really nice card back paper and all of the rest. So I like sending people things. And I have just a little yearly tradition. It's meaningless, really, but where I just try to write everyone in the company a little handwritten note, and I give them their bonus check. And I'm of the personal opinion that it's fun to get something in the mail that's actually real, not like an ad, not a bill or a reminder, but like someone deliberately dropped something in the mail for you to open. So I try to keep that in mind. I could easily just drop everyone's bonuses in their accounts and say nothing, or write like a letter on and type it to everyone. But I just like, that's what I want to do. So I think on shit, I don't even know where did Maddie say this? He had said that he had just received my bonus check and letter that I sent on December 15th or something. And some of them still haven't gotten through, to the point where everyone's like, Dustin's the only one that got his on time. I don't know how that happened.
Ben didn't get his, and he lives less than a mile from my house.
Right. Ben just never got his. Maddie just got his. Like, something went so fucking haywire with the mail. Another thing that happened was I ordered an ornament for our ugly ornament, exchange for my family. And I ordered it on like December 5th, and it got here December 26th after I didn't need it anymore. I saved it for next year, of course. But something went totally haywire with the mail this year. And I'm just going to assume that it's Brandon Lowe and Dylan Hoover's fault in some sense.
Yeah, it must be. There's no Occam's razor would suggest that is the case.
Dude, that pissed me off so bad, because I had to, during break, kind of go to everyone and be like, did you guys get your shit or not? Because we need to clear these checks before the end of the year, for accounting purposes. Like, they need to be cleared, or I don't know, it's going to be fucking so annoying. We have to amend shit. So I ended up just sending everyone their money on PayPal and then asking everyone to just rip their checks up should they ever get them. Chris, did you get yours?
Yeah. I got mine. I ripped it up.
Coward.
I know. I should have cashed it.
I did want to see who would have the balls to cash it.
And the reward is if you have the balls to do it, then there's no repercussion.
Then you get to
That
take the
connection.
company over. Yeah.
Yep.
That sounds like hell. Oh man.
You have to assert yourself.
Yeah.
Bunghole Bungalow wrote in
Oh,
and said, "What's up, Sacred Scrotums? This is mainly for Colin. So I tried the Winnie the Pooh thing out despite my wife thinking I was just being weird, and I have to say it was horrible. The whole night I couldn't sleep well because I felt like I was missing something. I was my fucking underwear. I slept with a knee pillow between my thighs, and I felt the breeze of the fan occasionally blowing into my ass crack. All around a terrible idea, and Colin is fucking out of his mind for sleeping like that. Take care." To each his own, but I want to say one thing about the Winnie the Pooh style sleeping. People are like, "Oh, so you're getting your shitty ass everywhere?" And I'm like, dude, I don't know what your ass looks like, but my shitty ass doesn't exist. If my ass is shitty, it's going into the shower. Like, do you wake up with your underwear covered in shit? Because that's what you're basically suggesting if that's what would have happened without you sleeping with underwear. And I just want you to understand that that's what you're suggesting. You're suggesting that should you take your underwear off, you will get shit all over your bed. That's a you problem. Because that's never happened to me in years and years of Winnie the Pooh style sleeping. So literally clean it up. Because I don't want to hear anymore. You're outing yourself when you're saying that. Oh, you're going to get your poop particles everywhere? I don't know, dude. Does your underwear look like a fucking dirty rag when you take them off? I don't understand. I guess I just don't get it.
what about poop particles in the farts? There's no filter.
So you think this is like a filter? This is like a whole
saying
COVID
it's
conversation
a little bit
now.
of blockage. We need a scientist who. What's the particle density? What can we expect? How much is that getting filtered through? I'm not saying it's massive, but there's the whole thing like, oh, fart on someone's pillow, bare ass, they get pink eye. Your sheets are a pink eye magnet, bro.
I just don't know about that. Like,
it could be. We need to check the science.
I'm of the mind that if I sat bare ass, like I just got out of the shower and then I sat bare ass on my bed and buried a fart into the mattress, right? Like buried it. It was a big one and it got buried deep. I'm of the mind that there is, after a couple of seconds or maybe a few minutes, there's no anything anymore. It just dissipates.
We need one of those swab things.
That can't be real, though. That can't be true. That doesn't sound right to me.
Here we go.
Because otherwise we're just farting left, right, and center, and it's just so you walk like you crop dust someone, right? They walk through it, and then they have the poop on them. Is that what you're suggesting?
That's two layers of filtering going on there with underwear and pants.
So you're saying if I sat on that bed, again, out of the shower, perfectly clean, so no contamination, and I bury a fart deep into the mattress.
You're never perfectly clean.
Interesting. So you're saying that I get out of the shower, I scrub, I get out of the shower, I'm holding in a fart that you've never even can imagine.
Because your insides are filthy. Like it's not like you haven't like you haven't like drank Drano and like cleanse your entire insides to the point where there's just no like filter bacteria in you. The inside of you is still fucking filthy and deranged and all fucked up.
But gaseous.
Right?
I'm saying the particles would come with it from the place in which it came. It's not about your butthole being clean at that point.
Right.
It's what Chris is saying. It's your nasty ass insides, bro.
It would be like if you brush your teeth, right? Let's say you brush your teeth and then you coughed on someone. You know what I mean? Like that's you would still be offended that somebody coughed on you.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting one. Right.
So what Chris is saying, you need to fart on your toothbrush. And then brush to prove if you're not afraid of any kind of particulates.
That is true. If you're really
prove it, bitch.
You give me a lot to think about.
Put your ass where your mouth is. Oh God. All right.
Thank you for writing in Bunghole Bungalow. Orion Verschow wrote in and said, "Greetings, gents. This one is mostly for Dustin. Is it creepy if I plan to name my next dog after you? If it's a boy, that is. It'll be Micah if it's a girl. I really don't know why I'm even asking you. My first two were Colin and Greg from the Beyond and Kind of Funny days. Colin kicked the bucket last year, and then we got our new dog, Chris. Yes, I know the others didn't really get a choice, so I'm not really asking, I guess. I'm just interested in your thoughts." And then he ends with an ominous note. "See you in New York."
Oh, yeah.
Orion, thank you for writing in. Dustin?
I'm okay with this particularly because the lineage has already been started. So it feels appropriate at that point. I don't know about, because Colin, we've had people write in saying about, oh, I'm going to name my kid's middle name is Colin.
Mm.
You know, that's where I would feel strange, you know, about somebody giving someone my name, a person. A dog, though, I feel like that's kind of cool because I love dogs. Dogs are awesome. So I'd be honored for your dog to have my name, especially in the lineage that's been created.
Yeah. The dogs will now be Chris and Dustin.
Now, Colin, you're dead.
Yep, I'm dead.
You've kicked the bucket in this situation.
It goes to show you how long I've been doing this, that he, you know, assuming his dog lived a nice, normal life, which I hope is the case.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, man. The nice thing about it is that
there's a dog named Chris that's named after
I
you.
hate that. I was going to say,
really?
It's not because it's not about a dog being named after me specifically. It's just Chris is too human of a name to give to a dog.
Right.
Like, it's just too, even Dustin to a degree is maybe a little too human. You know, like it's on that area where it's like you could argue like, hey, Dusty, you know, like there's like something there. But like, this is my cat, Christopher. Like I love
that.
Like that's, I don't know. I don't know. I had a friend whose cat was named Paul, and I could never take that cat seriously.
Dude, growing up, my grandma always named her cats human names. I know one of them was just John, but
that is insane.
Dude, get this though. She, when I was real little, had an iguana in her house, and the iguana's name was Howard.
That makes
Howard
me
the iguana, dude.
That makes me so much more upset than it reasonably should. It bothers me so deeply. Like, what is so serious about these animals that they need human names?
It's very funny. Like, the idea of having a dog named Chris is very funny. Yeah. Orion, we will indeed see you in New York. Thank you for the threat.
Yeah.
Jeffrey Leonard wrote in, said, hey, sacred fellows, when is the proper time to take a shower? At the end of the day to wash the grime off, or in the morning to start the day off fresh? Here's my thing about this. When I worked a real job, like, and I had to interact with people, I always took showers in the morning.
Yeah.
Because like and to this day, if I actually have to go do something, which is very rare, I'll always take a shower. Otherwise, I take my showers actually a weird time, which is like late afternoon, early evening, because I work out and then I take my shower. So I have a very unique kind of perspective on this. But for normal people, I think it's kind of essential that you certainly take a shower before you go out. But depending on the kind of job you do and the kind of situation you have, you might want to take a second shower at the end of the day, which I think is one. You know, my dad's a 2-shower kind of guy. I love taking 2 showers. I just have kind of stopped because it's a waste of time, and it's like, why am I doing this? But I would live in the shower if I could. I love the shower. I love it.
I like it too.
Yeah. So when's the appropriate time?
For me, well, usually I try to shower like today. Pretty standard is what I'll get up, finalize things for Duke. Once that's finished up, then I did my walking and stuff after that. But right around noon is I'll take a shower, eat lunch, and then by that time it's about 12:40ish, and I come up here and get ready to record. So it's almost like going out in a way for me. It's like, oh, I'm going to be on camera, make sure I'm freshened up for that.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Chris, when do you shower?
I mean, it depends on the day. Like on podcast days like this, I shower after the show because we record pretty early here. So I want to get like, I want to prioritize like food and coffee and that kind of thing. But usually it's like I'll shower in the morning, but I won't wash my hair. And then at night I'll shower again and then I'll wash my hair. That's usually how I do it. I take 2 showers generally. Just because I like the shower.
Yeah, I just love it, man. Trying to get 2 showers in is like a very Jerry Moriarty, my dad sort of thing, because my dad will take a shower right before he goes to bed and then right when he gets up, which I find, which is very interesting to me, you know, and that's very luxurious. But here, can I say something about the opposite? If you're not showering every day.
Oh, we've talked about it. I got a lot of hate for this, Colin. Let's bring it up.
You got to shower every day.
The comments can eat me.
You got to shower every day.
How do you not have such dry skin in the winter?
And also,
both of you don't live in as cold a climate as me, to be fair.
And also, But you gotta, in my opinion, it's not the dark ages anymore. You know? Like, not only do we have access to running water and all these things, but we also know that, like, there was a legitimate concern that, like, oh, you probably shouldn't really be washing yourself off. Like, you know, a naturalistic kind of approach to it as well. But we're many hundreds of years beyond this. So I'm going to need you, just the royal you, get in the shower.
The issue is that people don't shower enough. Certain people just don't shower enough. So it's better to present the message that it's better to present the message of, hey, over shower, so that people can fall short of that goal and at least shower a little bit. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah.
We're like, yeah, you shouldn't be showering like 4 times a day or anything.
No.
And if you are showering that much, you should, like Dustin said, like you should be like I have lotion. Mm-hmm. And all sorts of lotions, like where I make sure that all that shit's taken care of.
Oh yeah, my body's a slip.
That's just a good habit to have in general, just for your skin. I think a lot of people don't really understand. Like, it's kind of crazy looking at just, I don't know, when you have a big family and you see generations and you see like kind of skincare routines kind of evolve over time. I remember my grandmother when she was like 60. Or 65 or something when I was a kid. And I look at my dad, who's like 10 years older than she was when she passed away, like when I was a child. And it's crazy how much better he looks. Just because, just from skincare routine, just from like putting lotion on. So like, it's just a good habit to get into in general to do that. But I don't know, man, you walk by people sometimes and you're just like, what the fuck are you doing? That you smell.
It's so gross.
Bad.
The funniest things for me were being in the airport in the morning and someone stinks.
Oh my
it's
God.
Like, dude, what?
Oh,
like, that's what I'm saying. Hey, Stinky, get in the shower. And you know who I'm talking to?
Yeah,
it is important. You out there, isn't it?
It is important though. It is important though to, like, I feel like it's important to wash your hair before bed. I don't think you necessarily have to wash your hair every day, even necessarily, but like if you do, you should do it before bed, because otherwise that oil is going to get all over your pillow. It's going to fuck your face up. It's going to do all sorts of shit. So be wary of that.
Yeah. Take a shower, for God's sake. Do it. There was a day, actually, it was so weird because it was real. And Micah noted, she was like, wow, this is like a really like grounding moment for you, because I work out almost every day. I only take a day off like once or twice a month because of timing. So my showers happen naturally because it's like I'm all gross getting in the shower. So there was a day where I didn't work out and I was just going through the motions. And then like at 9 or 10 at night, Mike is like, did you not shower today? And I had this whole like boom kind of moment where like everything went silent. And I was like, holy shit. Like, I feel so disgusting right now. I didn't shower today. And it's been not that long since I last showered a day. So people walking and going into the airport 6 a.m. and they're stinky. I just don't know about that.
Yeah. It's unacceptable.
Like, this is a society.
We live in a society.
And then you have to put people in awkward positions too. Like, someone's got to say something to you at some point. And what's going to end up happening is you're going to stink the plane up. You know. Get in the shower. All right. Thank you guys for the letters to help us warm up. Let's get into some games related stuff now. This is what everyone's here for anyway. I start with Jordan Manuel, who wrote something for me. I was going to put this later in the show, but I was like, let's just get this out of the way right now. We don't even have to waste time with it. Hi there, CDC. First time writing to you guys, but I have a question for Colin. After listening to you rave about Mega Man for the past year of listening, so I finally decided to download the Legacy Collection, and I've completed the first 2 games. I have to ask, does it get any better? They're fine games, but is it more nostalgia than anything that keeps you talking about these games? Appreciate the entertainment as always, boys. No, Jordan, it's that you have no taste. But if you don't like Mega Man 2 as like this elite sort of thing by the time you get to Mega Man 2, then you're probably not going to like the rest of the games. But Mega Man 2 it's not real. By the way, I'm kidding, of course, about the tasting. Mega Man 2 is the archetype Mega Man game that people love. Like, that's like the most beloved Mega Man game. 3 and 4 add things to the game fundamentally in slide and power shots that change the way the game plays, but nothing else really fundamentally changes about them. So if you don't like 2 specifically, it's hard to imagine that you would find much to like about the other ones. But I would just argue, Jordan, the way you say, like, is it just nostalgia that keeps you talking about these games? In some sense, but the Mega Man series on NES is widely considered like one of the greatest, tightest, most elite side-scrolling action games ever. It's not me only that thinks that. That's a pretty common stance, especially if you come from the NES era. So, Jordan, you're the odd man out. Mega Man 3 is the best game of all time. You're like the guy in the mine shaft, and there's the diamonds, and he's done all the work, and there's just that little sliver of rock. Sorry.
Dire times.
All right, my friends. Let's get into some things here. There's a Death Stranding 2 leak, so it seems. George Costanza's wallet wrote in. Said, hey, CDC. With rumors circulating around Death Stranding 2 being subtitled On the Beach and a state of play being imminent, can we expect this to be the next major AAA Sony decides to push if the scuttlebutt turns out to be true? Or can we also anticipate something from a first-party developer, possibly Sucker Punch, who released Ghost of Tsushima half a year after Death Stranding released? GOT is Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I don't like using this for Ghost of Tsushima, especially because the T is like, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
Thanks and keep up the awesome content. Thank you, George Costanza's wallet. So, well-established French website, D-Labs magazine, writes that Death Stranding 2 may be imminently shown off again, and that the game, they say authoritatively, is called On the Beach. There are rumors that, as I said earlier, and we can get into it now, I can't confirm any of these rumors, I don't know, but there seems to be some scuttlebutt around a state of play, perhaps in February, maybe early to mid-February. This would make some sense because should you get it out early February, you can push Helldivers one more time. You can obviously push Final Fantasy VII Rebirth later in the month. You can push Pacific Drive again. And then you can date Stellar Blade. You can show the what is it? It's not the last Ronin. That's the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Rise of the Ronin.
Yeah.
And maybe have an announcement or two, Concord, something like that. I don't know what they're going to do, but that is believable to me. But nonetheless, Death Stranding 2, it looks like it's going to be called On the Beach. Might be shown off at a state of play. You'll remember that back in September, there was this picture of a guy working at Kojima Productions in Japan. People zoomed in on his screen, and it looked like the file he was working on in Premiere was titled State of Play. So who the hell knows? How are we feeling? It's kind of time, isn't it? Death Stranding's from 2019. That came out when I was still living in California. I remember specifically because I played some of it there, but I actually played most of it at my mom's house that holiday season, or leading into the holiday season. And God, I love that game. I can't wait to play it again. Like, that's going to be another game that I'll play into Death Stranding 2 and get ready for that, especially because I never got the platinum it, and I'd really like to do that on PS5. So I'm amped up to hear more. Dustin, let's go to you first. Death Stranding 2 On the Beach. Do you believe it? Reliable source, typically. French language, so you'll have to go translate it if you don't speak French. Who does? What do you think?
I feel the same way that I felt when it was announced, in that I feel like Death Stranding is a complete story and a complete piece, right? And so thinking about Death Stranding 2 initially was kind of disappointing to me, especially from Kojima, who has such creative, strange, and off-the-wall ideas. And so to see him return to the same thing again was disappointing. But at the same time, I trust Kojima to, if he has something new and interesting to do with the IP, and that's what he wants to do, then I'm in. And everything we've seen from it, with the very little we've seen, I guess, has been really cool. And so I'm excited. Despite that initial criticism, I'm just ready to see more. Like you said, when was that reveal? Was that over a year ago?
Yeah,
it feels like a while ago.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what it even was at. But so yeah, we haven't really heard anything since. We've gotten more Kojima projects announced, as far as that OD thing that he's doing with Microsoft.
It was the Game Awards 2022, by the way.
2022. Okay, so it has been a minute since we have heard anything. So it definitely feels like it's about time. I just wonder if it's potentially could be 2024, maybe an early 2025 game. Maybe it's pretty close already. Who knows?
Yeah, and again, I disagree with you in the sense that I'm not disappointed at all. I feel like you could see Death Stranding being a one-off, but they're in really recollecting and thinking about it over time and kind of just marinating on it. It's like, it would be interesting to see how it would change. Like, what would you do to it to differentiate it?
Right.
And that I think is exciting because we have really no idea. If it's literally the same thing, like literally the same thing, then I think that might still be really great. But I think that that's kind of going to be a little deflating to what I expect, which is going to be maybe an evolution to do so. Like, in other words, I don't know if Death Stranding 2 is going to be a delivery simulator.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm hoping, but who knows? Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. What are your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of with Dustin in the sense that, like, when I played Death Stranding and I did love it, I also kind of felt like I don't know what else. I couldn't conceptualize what else you would do to really get anything out of it. It seemed like it kind of did all that it needed to do, and its simplicity was kind of what made it so appealing in the first place. And the fact that it wasn't trying to do all of these crazy things, it was like a really grounded. I mean, it was a walking simulator. Like, and I say that with no hint of disrespect or anything. I thought it was really cool the way it did it. I thought it was fucking fascinating. But I guess it's ironic to wonder if a walking simulator has legs. But like, I just don't know. I can't imagine what you would do to Death Stranding to really justify a sequel, and that's part of why I was kind of initially maybe a little bit like, I don't know, because the sequel landscape that we are used to is very, it's the same thing again. That's kind of generally what we get out of sequels, like even good ones, things like, God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2. And, these are great games, but like it is more of what we had before. And I don't know if I necessarily want that out of Death Stranding. I want to see something almost completely identifiably different from the first one, which is kind of antithetical to what a sequel is anyway. So I guess I was kind of just hoping for like another new thing. I thought we were kind of on this weird kick of Kojima doing a bunch of weird one-offs. And that's kind of what got me a little bit more excited about Death Stranding's success in the first place. But I come around to the same kind of conclusion that Dustin comes to, where it's like, I mean, he just makes really interesting things anyway. So I'm going to give this kind of the benefit of the doubt in some sense, because I just feel like in order for him to even want to do this in the first place, there has to be a good reason. And so I trust that enough to be like, yeah, I'm curious. I'll at least, pay very close attention to it and see what people are going to be saying about it when it comes out. If it turns out that it sucks, that's really disappointing. But
oh yeah, I'll be the judge of that. I'm going to play it regardless of what people say about it for sure.
Right? Yeah. So we'll see.
I think. Yeah, money's not really an imperative for him, you would assume, which is going to be pretty rare in the games industry, especially in this era. But he can be and has been, I'm sure, courted in many different ways. So he does probably take projects more deliberately. And the entire idea of COVID changing the narrative of the game, I think, is really cool. I don't know if you guys know much about that, but he's spoken about that.
Oh, yeah. Like how he got tired of like predicting the future or something.
Yeah, and like they went back and kind of rewrote it, which I think is super cool. And so it'll be more Death Stranding when you consider Death Stranding's very eerie when you consider when it came out and how it kind of felt like a 2020 simulator, and being alone, being outside alone, talking to people through barriers, and there's something really, really deep and meaningful about Death Stranding. And I don't think he really meant that. And I think that happens over and over again. In Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, there's like crazy shit in those games where it's like, what? Like, how did you know? Not so much Metal Gear Solid 1, but there's stuff in there too, but 2 and 3 for sure. And so, dude, I'm amped. I don't care what it is because I'm going to play it, but I do hope that it is something distinct. And of course, guitar enemy. Come on. The guitar playing guy. Let's get it together, guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of Death Stranding, it looks like Death Stranding Director's Cut has a release date on iPhone. Now, it's being published by 505 Games, and they say that it's coming out January 30th. However, the Apple Store itself says January 31st. So I don't know which of those dates is going to end up being right. But are either of you interested in checking this out in this format? This could potentially open, I don't know how big it's going to be, but it could potentially open this game up to an entirely new group of people. And I do wonder what they will think of it, because it is, unlike Resident Evil 4 or one of these other games that they're experimenting with on these high-end iPhones, Death Stranding is a gamer's game and is very abstract and weird. And I would imagine most people would be like this. I would imagine if you gave this to a casual gamer, they would not, no offense to them, but they would think it would suck, because you have to understand games at a deeper level and get more out of them. So it is a potential for this to proliferate more. And it's interesting because Sony owns this IP. They're not publishing it, but they own it. So it's going to be on iPhone. Any interest in playing it there, either of you?
If I was going to play it on a handheld, I'd be checking it out on Steam Deck. But I noticed also that this is coinciding with a release on Mac computers as well. So you'll be able to play it natively through the Mac App Store, which is cool. But there is nothing more unappealing than the thought of playing this on a phone and you're walking and the amazing music is playing, and then you get a notification from somebody that's like, hey, check out this funny TikTok or this meme or whatever. And it's like, I like that stuff, but I'm walking right now with Norman, and it's kind of breaking the mood right now. So
yeah, understood.
Not ideal. Dude, Apple's really trying to push big games on iPhone right now. They just did Resident Evil 4, and I think they also did Resident Evil 8 on iPhone, and they run surprisingly well, which is neat. But again, I'm struggling to figure out who those are for, really. Just because I think that hardcore gamers that would want to play something mobile would have something like a Steam Deck. But I don't know, maybe there's the people out there, or maybe it's just something that's easy to do with the way their tools work, that if you want to put it on Mac computers, that porting it over to iPhone, now that the iPhone's so powerful, is not that difficult. So why not, you know?
Yeah. You have any thoughts, Chris, you want to share?
I don't know. I think it might be, I'm curious about how many versions of this game or these games sell on iPhone. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm most curious about. Like, how many people are really biting this, and how many people are really engaging with it? Because my instincts tell me that like something like Death Stranding is not going to really appeal to anybody who would play games on a phone as their primary way of playing. And if I don't see it. I don't want to play games that way. I don't know anybody who does. So I think that's kind of where it is for me. It's like, usually mobile games are for like when you're fucking, I don't know, on the toilet passing time or on the bus. You know, you're not playing through an entire sequence of, you know, Resident Evil 4 on the bus. You're not going to make a delivery in Death Stranding on the bus unless you're taking like a fucking long bus ride, which, I mean, you know, maybe. But like, I don't know. I don't see the use case. I'd be curious to see what the stats are.
Yeah, I'd be interested too, because Apple can withstand heavy losses, and they want to make gaming, and they long have wanted to make gaming a big platform for them. It's funny because I know a lot of people that work on Apple's gaming stuff, or did work on Apple's gaming stuff and getting off the ground, actually come from IGN, and it's a lot of them, like Matt Casamassina, Mark Bozon, Juan Castro, Scott Sinkowski, Charles Oniet, like just. And Nate Ahern was there for a while. Like, a bunch of people from IGN helped craft like Apple's gaming initiative. And it's fascinating to see if it comes to fruition or not. Because obviously they want to be there. They know. They see how much money and time people are spending on other people's games, which they get a nice ripoff of course. But good luck to Death Stranding on phone. We'll see how it does. There's new PS5 firmware out there. It apparently isn't mandatory. And so you can optionally download it, but you might want to consider that. Just wanted to throw that out there for people to consider. But a more interesting piece of news directly from PlayStation actually comes by way of the PlayStation blog, their official conduit for fan interaction. And they released PlayStation Store's top downloads of 2023. So it's unclear what this exactly means. It says, quote, last year saw a legendary lineup of tremendous games spanning many genres and playstyles. Today, it's time to look at the top PlayStation Store downloads across all of 2023. With so many great releases, this list features some of the last year's biggest blockbusters, plus some returning fan favorites that found their way onto the list. So it's not clear if it's based on sales or just download velocity or physical games are at all included in this. I really don't know how to read it, but here's what it says. Hogwarts Legacy, most downloaded PS5 game. And then Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 in second, and Spider-Man 2, very strong showing at third. I thought it was interesting to note that Baldur's Gate on this list is number 7. We were talking about, which is awesome. We were talking about how this game is just conspicuously absent from Circana, but it's because Larian doesn't share their data. So we really had no idea how Baldur's Gate 3 was doing, and there were some theories that it wasn't doing well or people weren't playing it. Clearly, that's not true. The game only sold for a third of the year or so and is in the 7th slot, ahead of games like Diablo 4, MLB The Show, Final Fantasy XIV, Resident Evil 4 Remake, Dead Island 2, all on the list. Over on PS4, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 was the biggest game, and then Hogwarts Legacy number 2, and then a bunch of sports games. You see here Red Dead Redemption 1 at 8. So it did pretty appreciable. You also see something like Persona 4 Golden at 15, which I think is fascinating. And the Dead Island 2 PS4 port is at 16. So some interesting games on there. And then over on PSVR 2, Pavlov number 1, Beat Saber number 2, Kayak VR number 3. Nothing too exciting there. Free-to-play games for the year. Fortnite number 1, Roblox number 2. Amazing performance. Roblox has been on the platform for like 2 months. And it's already number 2. Ahead of Call of Duty Warzone at 3, Fall Guys 4, Apex Legends at 5. So nothing too crazy there. Although eFootball, Konami's eFootball number 10. Very interesting. And if you look at the European charts, number 6. So shout out to all the performers over there on the PSN charts. RIP Sacred Sail Saga. I saw this article on IGN that I thought was interesting, and I wanted to present it to you. Kat Bailey over there writes, Dragon's Dogma 2 director explains why less fast travel can be a good thing. And she writes, quote, fast travel is a contentious issue within open world games. Make it too easy and you risk trivializing the world. Make it too hard and players may find travel tedious. Weighing in on the debate, Dragon's Dogma 2 director Hideaki Itsuno explained why he is keen to avoid the former, preferring that players travel normally and experience the world around them. So then he says to IGN, quote, just give it a try. Travel is boring. That's not true. It's only an issue because your game is boring. All you have to do is make travel fun. That's why you place things in the right locations for players to discover or come up with enemy appearance methods that create different experiences each time or force players into blind situations where they don't know whether it's safe or not 10 meters in front of them. We've put a lot of work into designing a game where you can stumble across someone and something that will happen. So while it's fine if it does have fast travel, we decided to design the map in a way that the journey itself could be enjoyed. In the same kind of way in real life that you may deliberately choose to go by bike or by foot while traveling instead of taking faster options. Dustin, I was curious what you thought of this. Dragon's Dogma 2, set for launch somewhat imminently, March 22nd on PlayStation 5. Is the director of Dragon's Dogma 2 right? That fast travel is actually its own sort of encumbrance and is a design flaw that tries to mask over boring gameplay. I, by the way, profoundly disagree, but I'm curious what you think.
I think it really depends. I think about some games that rely so heavily on fast travel and how that, I guess it's boring, but you can think about, well, what the alternative is walking from A to B. And if walking from A to B is even more boring, then that's your better option. So what the question I have is that when we play Dragon's Dogma 2 is he going to be correct? Is the world that they've created interesting enough that you don't feel bad that fast travel is difficult? I think that's a pretty big claim to make, because I think there are a few games that do this kind of thing. Because even in a game like Elden Ring, which I would argue is one of the most fun games to just travel around and see the world, once you've explored a certain area enough, then it no longer becomes fun to explore because you know everything that's going on. So arguably Dragon's Dogma 2 would need to, if it's making this argument, make their world map so dynamic that no matter what, when you're going from A to B, you don't know what to expect. So I'm really curious to see if his claims hold up. I think that he has merit to what he is saying, especially given the landscape of a lot. I mean, I think about Starfield in particular was a game that I think did fast travel way too much. And honestly, Bethesda games in general, I would say that it was a lot of fun your first time walking from A to B, but after that, there was no point for the most part to do it again. So we'll see. I really need to fit in Dragon's Dogma 1 before it comes out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to. And I don't know if it's a game that I can just jump right into 2.
They say that you can
but
just jump in.
They always say that. You know, they never want to put up a barrier, but it's one of those like, really should I skip the first one? I don't know.
Chris, what do you think about fast travel? You think it's a crutch?
I think it works. I think it varies. You know, like I think in a game like Spider-Man 2, that game has fast travel, but you never really want to use it because moving throughout the city is kind of the core part of. It's kind of a core part of that experience. It's arguably more fun than the combat, like in my opinion. But there's also like when I was cleaning up trophies, I was very happy that system was there. You know, because I'm just trying to clean this up. Like I'm not here to necessarily experience the city again. I'm just trying to get from point A to point B so I can get these things done. And in that sense, you know, I think they're kind of an important utility for people who want to engage with the game in a different way. But I don't know. I look at games that might be, because there were a lot of people who would argue and probably could rightfully argue that Death Stranding is boring. You know what I mean? Because it's literally just walking. And I remember that being my assumption of the game before I played it. And that was a lot of people's takeaway after playing it, that it was boring just to move around. And I think it's really kind of subjective. It's kind of where I felt very differently about Starfield, because like the point of space kind of is that emptiness. And if I was like totally on board with that kind of experience of like trudging through wastelands with like nothing, because I found that like weirdly calm. I don't know. There was something about that I really enjoyed that a lot of people were like, oh no, I just want to skip all this, which makes perfect sense. If you're just in for like, if you want like an action oriented or just like a really like dynamic kind of world, it's like definitely not that game. And so I don't know. I think it's better that your game has it than not, honestly. Because if I had to, like Justin was saying about Elden Ring, like if I had to walk everywhere in Elden Ring, as good as that game was, that would have been a massive fucking encumbrance on my enjoyment of that game, I think. Like, for sure. It would have presented a more dynamic and less cut up, a more seamless version of my experience of that game, I guess. But I don't know if that experience is worth the trade-off of just not being able to get to where you need to go and experience the new areas that you just want to experience. Like, I don't need to go through that opening area a million times. I don't need that. You know, I want to get to the new area, and then I'll take my time in the new areas and give me that agency to explore it where I want. So, like, I don't know. I think it varies. But I would almost always rather a game have it at the very least. I do think if you rely on it too heavily while you're playing it, that does signal maybe a problem with your world, but it doesn't mean that the feature itself is like I wouldn't say that's a problem with the feature necessarily.
Yeah, I personally think he's kind of overstating things a little bit, in my opinion. Just it's player's choice. Right. I think about Fallout and how they have that hardcore, like the hardcore modes where you have to sleep, where you can't fast travel, where your encumbrance is like way lower than it would otherwise be, where health packs like don't work the right way and take time to work and all that. And that's like a very hardcore player's choice. And the other side of that is that in Fallout, you have to kind of walk to and discover on foot every place, which you can then travel to quickly. And the great stories, by the way, there's so many great stories of people saying that they played that game not knowing you could fast travel, like Fallout 3, Fallout 4, where it's like, I didn't even know. Like you and they were playing it like the straight up old way. But I kind of contend that no matter how dynamic or seemingly dynamic you make games like that, it's kind of the same thing over and over again. So I don't blame people for being like, there's an enemy encounter or like an NPC, but I don't know, man. Or I can just take this 20 minutes and go spend it doing something new. I think it's kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because there are games where all of the quick travel is done on menus, and those kinds of games are, I think, more what I would say has a problem. So a game like Tactics Ogre Reborn or something where you're just on a map, like a static map, and you're using like a grid to just say like, I want to go here now, and I want to go here now, and I want to go here. And there's no traveling at all. And that people could argue it's like, oh, okay, you're missing a lot of the interstitial potential of your party running into, I don't know, an enemy party and having experience from fighting it and all the rest. But in a game like an open world game, I understand what he's saying, but I find that would be really boring in most games and really pad how long a game should be as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fun to say, but I don't think it really makes any sense.
I think there's also the issue of just like, dude, you're not going to make a game more dynamic than real life. And there are plenty of times where I would want to fast travel in real life. Like
Right.
I can't even tell you how many times I've gone to the airport and been like, man, I really wish I could just skip this. I'm sure I'm going to see things on this plane that I'm not going to see again. I'm going to hear a conversation that I've never heard. I'm going to see an argument take place that I'll never see again. But like, I would simply rather just be where I'm going. And, you know, I remain thoroughly unconvinced that any video game is going to convince me that that's not, at the very least, a great option to have. You know,
Sorry, I'm writing a note. As long as it's there, like you're saying, like an experiential thing for people that want to use it, I think that's great. And by the way, I think hardcore modes are super cool. Permadeath, no quick travel, sleep, eat, drink. That shit's cool as hell. Permanent damage and all that. I love that. But that's not the way I want to play. Yeah.
I've actually thought about going back to Skyrim and playing that way. Because like I apparently there's like a survival. I didn't know, but I think I knew about this like kind of tangentially, but like I was never really interested in it. And then somebody brought it up to me. It's like, oh yeah, there's like a survival mode in Skyrim. I was like, I don't know. I'm kind of. It's been a long time since I played anything like that, like a permadeath kind of like serious like sim type of experience, and I'm kind of itching for it. And I might dive into like one of the probably like one of the. Either Skyrim or one of the Fallouts.
I think about Skyrim every once in a while, and that I feel like that's a big missing piece for me. And then I played it very briefly on PS3, probably for 10 hours or so, and then never got back to it. I remember I said it on the show before that what I remember about my experience with it was just being so blown away by the night sky, being like, this is incredible looking. I can't believe how good this looks. But I feel like there is something cool to it in the sense of playing like that, in the sense that you have like this huge map and you do all these quests or whatever, and then you kind of have to think about it sequentially. Like, oh, I can't just go here and give this person this thing. So maybe I'll stop off here and do this and here and do that and go there. That's kind of neat if you want to really immerse yourself in something. But I don't think I want to play any game to that length, or at least I've not encountered the combat loop and the quest structure and everything that would make me want to do that in almost any game. After 100 hours, I mean, that's maxing out for me. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't do this
Dude,
anymore.
I'm even fast traveling in fucking Spyro as I'm trying to get all these trophies. You know what I mean? Because like there are gates, and it's like a platforming challenge game. So like in order to go home, to go back to like the main hub in the original game, you would have to go through the level and like kind of get back to that gate. But in the trilogy, you could just like press pause and like go into and I'm doing that almost every time. Because why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't I do that? Yeah. It's not that the game isn't fun. The game's great. But like I did this already. So I don't
know. This final piece of news I thought was interesting because I didn't even remember this being announced. I had to go back and look. But PC Gamer reports Final Fantasy XIV's live action TV series is dead due to a scale that proved too much with COVID-19. So they remind us, quote, back in 2019, a live action version of Final Fantasy XIV was in the works, announced as a collaboration between Sony Pictures Television and Hivemind, responsible for Netflix's The Witcher series. It seemed like a natural pairing. Unfortunately, it looks like that particular project is dead in the water, according to Hivemind's co-founder, Dinesh Shamdasani, on Twitter. When asked for an update on the project, he responded that it was dead. He continued to write, quote, We took around a fantastic pilot script by Ben Lustig and Jake Thornton, along with a multi-season plan they built with our showrunners, but got rejected across the board. The size and scale needed to do it right proved too much for anyone to want to risk. Amazon came closest, end quote. And then Jake Thornton, who was noted as one of the writers, said that this was, quote, a result of COVID, unfortunately. We took it out just as studios began to zip up their purse strings, end quote. This seems like a... excuse me. Sneeze there. It seems like a natural fit. I'm actually a little surprised. Final Fantasy XIV has a huge hardcore fan base. You'd think you'd be able to leverage them. It would almost, The Witcher 3 is The Witcher is a bigger a la carte sales phenomenon, but I would imagine Final Fantasy XIV has made substantially more money over time. You would think that you would actually get one over the other. What do you think of this, Dustin? Do you even remember this being announced? I don't remember this at all, but I went back and read and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this was indeed announced. And it's surprising Amazon wanted it more than anyone, but it ultimately didn't come to fruition. Any thoughts?
I'm sure that now a lot of these studios that were thinking about it maybe are glad, just because I think about that Lord of the Rings Amazon show that was like, what, they spent $1 billion or something insane on. And I don't really know if it made an impact at all. So I wonder if there's some concern also with the ending of Game of Thrones kind of fizzling out. And I know there's the new Game of Thrones spinoff. I haven't seen that, and I know people are enjoying it, but I'm sure that there's some trepidation around high fantasy TV, and Witcher also kind of going down in terms of its quality and fans not being as interested in it. So it's probably a riskier bet, and we are dealing with Final Fantasy, which, while you're right, there's definitely a huge hardcore audience that would support it. I think a lot of times with fantasy stuff, people need to be, or the market overall needs to be kind of tricked into liking it, right? Where people are like, oh no, I'm not really into high fantasy stuff except for Lord of the Rings. And eventually after Game of Thrones got really big, then I got into it. It's like, it needs that momentum. Maybe that fan base would be able to do it for it, but I can understand the concerns. And, I wonder, have we ever had a live action Final Fantasy adaptation?
No.
Ever. Yeah.
No.
Maybe there's a smaller start to begin with. But at the same time, imagine how some of these characters in Final Fantasy would look if you make them true to their characters.
Yeah.
I think it could be a little silly looking.
Well,
maybe not, though.
The one thing that I guess I was thinking about in terms of Final Fantasy and kind of, because I'm sure Square Enix is very keen on doing something, is why adapt 14? Why wouldn't you adapt 7 or 6 or 4 or something, or even 10, and really get into the nitty gritty of like a specific story there? Otherwise, having a Final Fantasy, like a show that's called Final Fantasy or Final Fantasy 14, it's like, I don't really know that makes any sense. I think the cross-media potential here is to just kind of exploit stories within those worlds that exist already, especially the ones that already have expanded universes. Like 7 would be, there's so many 7 things, or you can even imagine 13, like something with an expanded universe that where a live action adaptation would make sense the most. But I don't care. I don't watch any of this shit anyway. I do have Amazon Prime though, although Amazon, I did read that they're aren't they adding like a fee if you want to have ad-free Amazon Prime streaming now, which is so, it's like, come on, man, get fucked. Are you kidding? That's so stupid. Not that I literally think the last thing I watched on Amazon Prime was The Expanse, like years ago. So
yeah, I can't even remember the last thing I watched.
So it's not like I'm like interacting with it anyway, but it's certainly like preclusive now. I'm not paying even more. No. I spend so much money on Amazon already. Leave me alone. All right. That's it for the small news items. Let's get into the games we're playing. Chris, it says here you're playing Nothing in all capital letters.
Yeah. We've been over on the Snark Tank. We're working on, because Derek is moving here again, so we're working on trying to set up a live. We're working on trying to set up an in-person kind of studio kind of setup. Cool.
Where are you going to do it in one of your places, or did you like rent a place?
We're gonna kind of retrofit this office to
Smart.
do it. So there's like a lot of boxes in my living room right now.
Yeah, that's how Kind of Funny started, dude. I totally understand. Like, I think that's a great low cost move for you.
Yeah, it's just it's just been like so I haven't really had time to really like sit and play anything. I think I played like a little bit of Spyro, but like not really anything to talk about. We're making moves. I'm really excited to do that in person, by the way. Like, I really love just in person podcast recordings. It's a lot of fun. But
yeah, I mean, that is the ultimate ideal if you didn't have to sacrifice everything, like a bunch of other things to make it happen. Which
right, yeah, like we started that initially, and then COVID happened, and then we were like, oh fuck, and then Derek moved, so we were just like, all right, we'll stick with this stuff. But Yeah, so a lot of my week has just been planning this and getting all the equipment ready and figuring out like what cameras we need and what switchers we need and all this shit.
Cool. Remember to you guys have an LLC or something?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, remember that for you, if you're using a piece of your own apartment, you can write that. You have to talk to your accountant, but there's a way for you to write that, like that portion of that off and shit.
I got that squared away already.
All right, great.
That's very much done.
Like your power and your internet, it's awesome. You don't want to get crazy with it, but it's all legal. You should take advantage of those things. All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, congratulations on that. Well, I guess we'll see in the background as time progresses how it all gets set up.
Yeah. Well, I'll probably pull the green screen out to cover up a lot of it, but because it'll be really fucking messy. I think probably I'm gonna get started in putting it together in about probably like 3 weeks. We're still kind of, I don't know. It's still very early because we still have to figure out when he's coming out.
Yeah,
but I want to get everything done early.
Cool. That sounds exciting. Yeah. All right. Dustin, let's go over to you. You're playing Final Fantasy VII Remake and Pal World.
Yeah. I finished my replay of Final Fantasy VII Remake last night. And man, the ending of this game is so good. And the highs of this game are just so incredible. I was thinking in particular last night, playing the ending. No spoilers, of course. It's how much the music in this game hits. It hits all throughout, of course. But some of these moments at the end, just, the reoccurring themes and motifs you hear throughout the entire game, the way they really amp them up, really, really awesome. I'm so excited for Rebirth. This really took me to the next stage of being hyped for it. And I'm going to start the Yuffie DLC tonight. I started it when it came out, but something else came up and I never finished it. So I'm excited to play that. I got to say some of the negative aspects, though, of this game, I was thinking about this last night, where there's just a lot of filler in this game, where some really annoying parts where you're retreading areas, and there's a lot of parts where you have to go and hit switches to either unlock doors, or if you're in the sewer, you unlock these different things to allow water to flow through. Like, why does it take 5 seconds for Cloud to go? He has to go up and then it takes, lowers it. Mm-hmm. You don't have control during this. It's so annoying. So you have these filler segments that are also annoyingly, every little interaction takes just a little bit longer than you'd like. Man, this is such a good game. It's such a fully realized in its world, its art direction, its graphics, its music. And there's just these few things about it that really, really annoy me. And it's funny because even though there's these things that really annoy me about the game, I have played this game 3 times now since it came out, which is very unlike me to replay a game this many times. So its good parts are so great that none of that stuff matters. And a lot of cool, I mentioned earlier that I was watching different theory videos and a lot of really cool stuff with the story. Totally awesome. So highly recommend that. Get ready for Rebirth. If they tell you can just jump into Rebirth, which I'm sure they might be like, oh, well, they'll have a thing to catch you up. Don't do that.
Don't be weird. Can you stop being weird? There is no reason
triggered
for you to play Final Fantasy VII Rebirth if you've not played Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Yeah.
Like, that is insanity. Don't be a hype beast like that. Oh, I got to play the newest thing. You have no context. By the way, I feel, and I've said it before, I feel the same way about people playing Final Fantasy VII Remake with having no experience with Final Fantasy VII. It's like, you don't even know what they're remaking. But this would be even worse. This would be an order of magnitude worse. Don't you even think about it. You know what I'm saying? Don't even think about it.
Yeah,
Austin, go
absolutely.
I'm sorry.
I'm with you. I'm with you. So also, I've been playing Pal World. And yes, this is purely an instance of, as someone in the industry, when something like this blows up so big, I want to know what's going on with it. And so I've been checking it out and seeing what's going on. Everyone at this point knows the various controversies around this game. There was a big thing for a while. Like, first of all, does it use AI? Which, to my understanding, that was never actually confirmed. Someone made a tweet, which was then deleted because it was based on speculation. So that's not necessarily true, but there's so much information floating around that I don't really know at this point. And then, of course, all the accusations about plagiarism with different character models and stuff like that, which I've also seen mixed things about as well. And it's been interesting too. I didn't get to watch his video yet, but Hogue has been tweeting about this a bit. And I know he has a video about does the Pokemon company have grounds to stand on potentially to sue them? So I need to watch his video. I recommend checking out if any of those things are interesting to you. But in terms of the game itself, what actually is it? It's a lot of people immediately jump to it's a Pokemon clone. It is absolutely not a Pokemon clone at all. It doesn't play like any Pokemon game. And in fact, a lot of ways, what has been fun for me is the fact that it is almost a parody of Pokemon in certain ways. I talked about this a little bit on Sacred Symbols Defining Duke, where basically it's a survival crafting game where you make your own little campsite, you catch these pals, you bring them in, and then you can put them to work and have them grow stuff for you. I have mine. I have this little like mine set up where they're getting rocks for me. You got to make sure that they have food, they have beds. Some of them have inherent traits where they're kind of lazy, and so they won't work as much. You might want to swap them out with other ones. But it's also funny in that when you go and catch them, you literally just have to beat them up. You just got to punch them right in the fucking face. And it's these cute little sheep guys in the early area, and you're just punching them until they submit. And I thought that was awesome. So I have the early stages of my factory set up. I said on Sacred Symbols Defining Duke, I'm trying to get the iPhone factory going. Do you have these guys pump them out at a good rate? Get some profit. You
gonna have a suicide net?
Yeah, exactly. I want all that stuff. I want the fear. I want the intimidation going for these guys.
Yeah, you need like a party apparatchik to walk around the factory with, and disappear people every once in a while. Disappear pals.
Disappear them, Dude, it's so funny when eventually I've had a few instances where I've tried to catch a pal and I maybe punch a little too hard and then they die. And I get the pal meat from it that I can cook and
so
eat.
They die. It's not like Pokemon where they swoon or whatever.
It's so sad and cute because they fall over and then they have little X's on their head. And the first time I thought, oh, I knocked him out. Nope. He does not get back up. He just kind of rolls around dead if you walk around him. So I've been having fun checking it out. I am really not sure what to think about the accusations and stuff like that. I'm curious. I know the Pokemon company recently made a statement about it, basically saying like, yeah, we know about it. We're looking into it. It read to me very much as please stop asking us about Pal World because this isn't our game. We are well aware, but
yeah,
the media, I think the real story is just the meteoric success and sales of this game where sure, it is on Game Pass, but that's not really affecting the sales by any means. I just saw what was it, 8 million?
Yeah, it's like every 12 hours, it's like another million.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah. So it's an insane thing that is absolutely worth, I think, if you're interested in this industry, worth paying attention to. I don't think it's some kind of amazing experience that I'm going to tell everybody to run out and play. If you grew up with Pokemon and you want to see a darker parody almost of what that looks like, that's been the most enjoyable aspect to me. But I'm curious as the game goes further, because I know I've seen some of the stuff that Gene has posted and Gene talking about it. I don't have a gun yet, and having a gun in a Pokemon game, that's like a masculine urge as an American, I think, just to have a gun and shoot some Pokemon. Maybe, I don't know, can I give these pals guns as well? That might be fun.
I know
one of the
you
pals,
can, I think. I've seen pictures of them with guns.
Yeah. There's one that I caught, and then I read the description, and it says once you get a rocket launcher, you can load this pal as ammunition, and you just shoot him, and he blows things up. That's great too. So a lot of, there's all this talk about theft, and I'm not trying to downplay that, but there's a lot of fun, original ideas too here, and there's other arguments you can make about it. Kind of has a Fortnite aesthetic. It uses a lot from takes different stuff from like Rust and other survival crafting games and kind of meshes it all together. So yeah, I'm still checking out. I will continue to check it out, mainly for the allure of shooting these cute little creatures.
I'm already tired of the dialogue around this game. It's like it reminds me of The Last of Us Part 2 a lot, actually, where it's just not fun to talk about because, in my opinion, because there's so much heat around it already.
Yeah.
For me, and we talked about this extensively on Sacred Symbols Cross-Defining Duke on Sacred Symbols Plus, so go on Patreon to check that out if you want. And also on Punching Up, you guys covered it as well. And I listened to part of the episode because I wanted to hear what Dagan had to say specifically as an animator and an artist to see what his feel for it was. My whole thing with this Pal World game is that I think there's a very limited issue with it, and that people are conflating that one issue with it being, like you said, a carbon copy, in which it is in no way, shape, or form a carbon copy of Pokemon. So I think anyone arguing about any of that stuff, I'm like, that's stupid. And you can't trademark or patent a gameplay system or a style, right? Like you can with an overarching programming tool, like what was the thing in
Nemesis,
the Nemesis system, exactly, that read my mind from the Lord of the Rings games. But generally speaking, people can circumnavigate that and do just their own kind of thing, and that should be that way. I always bring up the Apple versus Microsoft lawsuit in the 80s over Windows, where they're like, you have to understand that Windows is literally Windows is a mirror image, flipped over image of the Apple OS to this day. That, like, things that are on the right or on the left, things that are usually on the left on the screen are usually on the right or on the bottom instead of on the top. Like and they got sued. There was a huge lawsuit over this, and the law was like, you can't really do anything about that. So from that perspective of saying, like, even if the game was similar, I'd be like, I don't know if that's my problem. My problem is, and Dagan, I think, put this, I don't know how you feel about what Dagan said on your show, but was kind of perfect, where he was basically arguing that it's in the design itself. And people keep bringing up this of the creatures specifically. And people keep bringing up, oh, no one gave a fuck about Temtem or whatever. And I'm like, dude, not for nothing. If you took I don't know anything about that game. I just see art of it and like some creatures. Take 9 creatures from Temtem and a real Pokemon, and I'll pick out the real Pokemon every time. They actually don't look like Pokemon. They look like kind of like a store brand Pokemon, and they all look like that. You don't say like, oh, that one looks like a Pikachu and that one looks like a this and that one looks like that. There's just no comparison between those games. And when I saw people making that excuse, and the old Dragon Quest stuff as well, which I don't agree is really there either. You know?
Yeah.
About saying like, oh, there's a clam Dragon Quest enemy and a clam Pokemon. I'm like, come on, guys.
It's a clam.
If you don't see, like, honest to God, if you don't see that some of these things look like Pokemon specifically, then I don't know what to tell you. Like that. Now the only question from there is that illegal? And I guess it probably isn't. But when I see pictures of, and I'm not saying the whole, I think there's 100 pals or whatever. I'm not saying all of them look like them, but there are ones where I'm like, dude, that is the eyeballs from this Pokemon. That is the mouth from this Pokemon. Like, it's not like, oh, it's drawn like it or it looks like it. I'm like, those are the eyes.
There are some of them,
the mouth.
There are some of them that I misremember. Like, I looked at them and I was like, I think that, like, I looked at, I can't remember, it was that oh my God, the yellow fucking, I don't know what to call it, but it was like some yellow pal or something. And I remember I looked at it and I was like, I looked at it and I was like, that's a Pokemon. Like, I remember this, I was wrong, obviously, but like, I almost like remembered it in the context of a Pokemon game. And I was like, oh, whoa, weird. I thought it was like the one that looks like an Electabuzz.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's what Dagan's arguing, is that, like, you can tell that there's more. It's like, again, with the Temtem example, it's like, I don't think you would be able to fool me even once by putting a Pokemon in there and being like, pick out the Pokemon. It's like, come on, dude. Like, we all know what these things look like. And I'm not even worried. First of all, I could give a shit less about Nintendo's legal situation. So I don't care if they sue anyone or what they do. I don't care. These are business. This one company is making hundreds of millions of dollars on this game. And then Nintendo, the threatened party, is a many billions of dollar company, obviously. And it's like, they can deal with that. I don't care about any of that. What I'm more interested in is why people can't see that and then be like, that's a little weird. Because to me, that is where I stand, where I'm like, I don't know that it's like a game that shouldn't exist. I don't know that there's really much crossover between Pokemon other than these very specific creatures. There clearly isn't. But I do think it's weird to say, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's like, are you fucking kidding?
Dude,
like, it is what it is. Now, it's a matter of, this is the thing, Dustin, you were saying, though, and I wanted to cap with this, and I'll go back to you, is you said it's like a parody. And it bothers me that they're not leaning into that, because that would be completely protected. It's like, it's as if Spaceballs was made, and they were like, so that's a parody of Darth Vader, right? And they're like, no, that's just a guy with a fucking helmet that looks like Darth Vader's helmet. It's like, so that has nothing to do with this?
Well, I think
and they're like,
their
yeah, no, it's
issue-
just a thing that happens to exist. And I'm like, but it's a parody of that. You lean into it, and then you're fully protected. You know?
Yeah, I guess from their perspective, it's not a parody. You know, like, they didn't make it as a parody. They made it as its own thing. So it's hard for them to lean into it, because it's not a parody of Pokemon. It's like a parody. Like, you could argue that there's like a satirical.
I should say the design is a parody. Is like, they should have said, like, yeah, we're parodying Pokemon. Like,
they should have, but I think that would prove that there was a link in the first place. It's almost better for them to just, like, and I'm not saying this is literally true. I'm saying, like, I can imagine this being a discussion that they've had where it's like, if we say it's a Pokemon of parody, that proves that we're aware of the situation.
Oh, totally.
So
I agree with you there. I think, but I think from an optical standpoint, it's like, you look dumb if you're really trying to make this claim. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, but they don't have to care about optics, because they're making so much money.
That's the difficult part about it too. And Dustin, I know you have more to say, and I want to go back to you. Is the weird thing about this is that this isn't a fake fly-by-night strange company. This is a real company that's put out real games, as I understand, and like has some sort of right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Craftopia, I think, is what it's called.
Like, it's not like a real, or it's not like they just came out of nowhere. I think that's true. So I guess I'm trying to support their claim that it's not like something that's trying to specifically take advantage of it. To reestablish what I mean before I go on to you, Dustin, is just, I don't care about the legality of it, really. That's up for people to worry about. I always say that I think that we should have much broader reference points for public domain and parody and inspiration and all of the rest. But I think that it crosses a creative line that I notice when something looks indistinguishable from the real thing, because that's more than individual creature design. And this is what Dagan was saying. It's about the philosophy behind the designs that binds them. And when your shit looks like it belongs in that, then you've crossed, in my opinion, you've crossed a creative line, whether or not that matters to the audience, whether or not that matters to the courts, whether or not that makes them or costs them a lot of money. I don't know or care. For me, I'm like, that's a little bankrupt, you know, and just a little. And I'm it goes into the great artist steal, not like that. You know, like they don't, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. It means steal an element, a component, an inspiration, a you know, whatever. I don't know. What do you have to say?
I was going to say, you were bringing up how there's kind of like a reflection of certain pals in Pokemon. Just look at, I made the thumbnail for Punching Up, and I put two side by side, Lucario on the right from Pokemon, and what, I don't know what pal this is from Pal World, but I have it on my screen right now, and it's maybe an inch big, and they just looks like on Smash Brothers when you do a color swap of certain characters that have like different skins and stuff. That's what it looks like from this view. Now, if you blow it up, you can see that there are more differences, but yeah, absolutely. Some of them are meant to be reflections of certain Pokemon. And I wish that wasn't the case, because there are so many interesting, creative, fun ideas here and that's something I think Dagan brought up when we were talking about it on Punching Up, is that there is a lot of cool stuff here, and they didn't need to copy to this degree. The other thing I'll just say to cap off this conversation is that this game has a weird thing about it, and this happens every few years. You mentioned Last of Us Part 2. I don't know if it's quite the same, but I definitely feel like there's some elements where people are going overboard to both defend and attack this game.
Yeah.
To the point where if you are even just playing it and just are having a fun time, people want to respond, make a tweet, leave a comment, whatever, and be like, you want to play this game that's stolen ideas, how dare you? It's like, dude, leave people alone. Just if you don't like it and you want to speak out, that's fine. In fact, I encourage the conversation around it, but you don't need to be an asshole to people for just playing something to that, it's so strange to me when we see these types of things pop up. And like you said, Colin, the toxicity with the conversation around this game is already getting so old.
Yeah, it's just like I'm already tapped out. I'm already like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
Like it's truly, I imagine this will be the last time it ever comes up on our show. Maybe when it comes to PlayStation, eventually we'll announce that or whatever, unless you want to talk about it as you're playing it. But yeah, the whole controversy around it, I just find strange. But yeah, looking at your thumbnail of the Lucario thing as an example, it's like, don't piss on my head and tell me it's raining. Like people out there can believe whatever they want. And it's like, there's no connection. And there's like, okay. Like whatever you say. And I think you're totally right, Chris, in that they say what they need to say to not expose themselves. And that's totally fine. And I understand that. And I also think it's okay to be inspired by things. I just think, like, imagine making a show like South Park and everything about it was different, right? Like it was about adults in Europe and they're really left wing and it's very serious and dire, but they all looked like South Park characters.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it's like, well, that's South Park because you just took a focal design philosophy from it and made it your own, and that you can't blame people for noticing. I started playing Pokemon in 1998. I have my original Team Rocket figures back there from 1998, 1999. Don't tell me about Pokemon. Okay. I was way too old to be playing it. Way too old. But nonetheless, I was doing it and I noticed that in 2 seconds. So should it matter to you? I don't know. I don't care really if it matters to you or not. It's up to the individual. But for me, I feel like it's a little bankrupt and a little strange. And I don't think Nintendo's going to pursue it. I agree that the letters seem to be like, yeah, guys, we get it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if you also saw someone talk to the old Pokemon company lawyer. Did you see this?
No,
like
I didn't.
He worked there for like 15 years and he's like, this is exactly the kind of shit we used to see 1,000 times a day. So I don't know how it even got this far. So his opinion as someone who was an internal litigator there was like, this seems indistinguishable. That, by the way, the thing behind you, Dustin, what is that, a humidifier? Back there?
This thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is my the desk, the gamer one that I said you can't fit your dick in.
Yeah, the butthole. It looks like a butthole farting.
Oh, perfect. This just like you on your sheets.
Yeah. All right. I'll get into what I'm playing really quick and then we'll move on. A few big news items to get through. I'm still playing Tales of Arise Beyond the Dawn. This is my PlayStation Portal game, and I play it typically during sports when there's something else on TV. So I'm just slowly grinding through that. I'm not really dedicated to it. I don't know if I'll actually see it through, but it's cool. It's post-game content, fun gameplay. I'm just doing a lot of side quests, optional bosses, and so on. The bigger game that I've been messing around with, actually, and I didn't intend on playing this, but people were talking about it so glowingly, and it's from a genre that I love so much that I felt like I really wanted to check it out, was Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. And I'm at the second to last boss. I got beaten by him pretty badly, so I'm like, I think I'll just explore and get new powers and health and all that. So that's kind of what I'm doing now in the game. It says on PSN I'm 80% through it. It's a really, really great game. I don't want to say really, really great. It's a really, really good game. It's great. But I am a little like, I saw people saying like, it's, early game of the year content. I'm like, I don't know, man, maybe take it easy on that. I don't think so. It would be pretty trivial to name better Metroidvania games than this, but it is pretty special and indicative of an older style of Ubisoft game. And I really love the subject matter. And what I wanted to say to people about this game that surprised me the most is it feels like God of War, not in its gameplay, but in the way it's delivered. It's all about like a pantheon of gods and demigods and supernatural characters and creatures of the mythologies, but more of a Persian centered, I guess I don't know, it would be like Hellenic or whatever. I'm not really an expert in older history at all, but it's really cool. Like there's a lot of really neat stuff about different characters and gods and names. You may have kings and ancient mythological characters, but from a different kind of, or, you know, a similar pantheon, but a lot of different representation, which I thought was really cool. And there's also a real beauty to the game. 2.5D is inherently offensive to me for Metroidvania. Like, I want every Metroidvania to be a 2D game, like a true 2D, preferably pixel art, but you can do all sorts of different things, but make it truly 2D. 2.5D is a cop out to me because I think it's ultimately cheaper to do. The cool thing though that they do in this game is that there's a lot of high quality visuals in it, and just a lot of moments where I'm like, damn, that's fucking cool. There's this one guy where he attacks you. They almost have these, the characters you fight, like the bosses almost have these summon like things where they have these little animations, and they get a little annoying, but one guy like shoots an arrow in the air, and then the 2.5D, the arrow goes in the air, and then all the stars in the air turn into arrows and fall. And it looks cool. It looks beautiful. Like, yeah, because they're able to use the 2.5D and kind of go into 3D and look up to the sky in this cutscene. So there is a cool element to 2.5D that can be leveraged visually if they want to put the work in, and they do that here. Like the game does have moments of true beauty and real cleverness in the characters. Yeah.
So you're saying it justifies using 2. Like because they couldn't do that kind of thing with 2.5D, and a lot of games that do 2.5D don't really do anything like that to justify.
2.5D is usually I don't want to say a cop out, but it's cheaper. So it's unusual for you to do a 2.5D game and then make it really beautiful, because usually you'd put that effort into a true beautiful 2D game. I mean, think about like Hollow Knight
or a full 3D game.
Right. Yeah. Or a full 3D game. And because you could have 3D Metroidvanias, people point to Darksiders as being a good example of that. And even Zelda, in a way, like the old like Ocarina of Time, you could even argue is like some sort of Metroidvania. But so I think that's kind of cool. With a little bit of money and a little bit of oomph, they kind of reinvented the 2.5D Metroidvania, and it's certainly one of the best of those. Like, I still think Shadow Complex is probably the best 2.5D Metroidvania, and I would say even games like Bloodstained were better. But this is a really solid game. It's a little expensive. I think it's $40. I don't really mind paying that, but I can see people being turned off by that. Maybe when it goes on sale. I also think it's on Ubisoft Plus if you want to just subscribe for a month and check it out that way. But it's pretty fun. I'm going to probably beat it tonight or tomorrow. I think I might platinum it. The one thing that people were really going in on, and I know you guys might have saw this, was the map functionality, which people have really been talking about. It's like a very unique map in the game that's never really been seen before in a Metroidvania. And it's rare to have a revolution in such a well-worn, like the standard for Metroidvania games is still Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which is 26 years old, right? So it's not like a lot of things come and really change things up. The reason Hollow Knight was so fun for people was because of how hard and deep it was. So I think that it's rare to have a revolutionary design edition, and in this game the map is very useful, but people are kind of describing it weird because they're talking about this one component of it where you can like take an in-game screenshot, stitch it to your map there, and then see what you have to do there, like another instead of just having to remember. But what I thought was the cooler addition, which is something I've never seen in a game like this before, is that it's not only that, there's a series of icons that you can put anywhere on the map. So like and there's like a series of 8 of them, and you can make them make what that doesn't tell you what they mean. It's just like, oh, you might want to use these. So one's a question mark, one's like a padlock, one's an X. And so you just put them around the map, and I've made my own language to say like, oh, I can't do this yet, question mark. Oh, this door is locked, lock icon. And I've found that mega useful compared to the screenshot thing, which is almost irrelevant to me. It's like, it's just cool to know like, oh, you can't go here for a reason. Just put a little reminder there. And
that's cool.
Yeah. So I feel like people almost didn't get deep enough in describing that from my point of view, where they're like, look at the screenshots you can take. And I'm like, that's cool, but it's actually way cooler that there's just a really quick way to just let yourself know to go back to these places.
That's kind of, I mean, I know you don't, you haven't played the more recent Zelda games, but the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have a similar thing, you know, where they have like a map that you can like put different stamps on, where it'd be like a chest or something. And that's super fucking useful for the same exact reason. I can imagine a Metroidvania would be extra useful.
Yeah, it sounds
that's
great.
Like that's one of the main reasons I'm really bad at those games. It's because I just can't remember where the fuck I've been or where the fuck I'm going. And I'm just like, oh, do I have to go back there? I think maybe. I don't remember.
Yeah, it does get annoying when you don't know where you're going, because you're just going in circles, and you know you have to you're just missing one thing. And this game does take care of that too. It's not totally unique to Metroid or to this in terms of Metroidvanias, but there are accessibility options where it's like, we'll tell you where to go next. It's shut off, and I actually have that turned on because I do find that annoying. It's like this huge sprawling map. And it's not saying like, this is what you need to do. It's just saying like, here's where you got to go. And it's just like an X in the northeast on a part of the map you haven't been to yet. And it's like, all right, at least I know that that's the direction I have to go in. I don't mind that so much. The upgrade systems are pretty cool. There's like a relic system, health, and so on and so forth. I will say that it's much more, I excel at 2D platforming. This is just something I'm very natural at, and it really relies on that. And it's almost more about that than the combat, as opposed to a Castlevania or a Metroid game where it would be a lot more about combat and less about platforming feats, although they're in there. It's much more in the reverse, where you can go minutes and minutes without fighting anything in this game, which is like unheard of in Castlevania.
I like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't mind it, but I do love. There's some really cool enemies in this game, but I do love that there's more of a variety of enemies in Castlevania. It's hard to not compare the two. I guess as I'm playing it, what I'm realizing is like, man, it would be cool to see Ubisoft take a swing at Castlevania, because they kind of get this, and this feels like God of War almost, to like a God of War Metroidvania. And people will see what I mean when you play it. I think you'll see it too. I think it really bleeds through. Like, that inspiration, I think, is totally obvious. But we have a couple of inquiries here from the audience I wanted to get through before we move on. Connor Reese wrote in and said, "Greetings, Sacred Crew. Are any of you playing Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown? I'm around 75% of the way through, and I'm having a great time. I think it's a wonderful Metroidvania with solid combat and excellent exploration and platforming challenges. I also think the game provides you with some very cool Metroidvania abilities. My question is this: what is your favorite ability to receive in a Metroidvania? Is it the classic double jump, air dash, maybe a grappling hook of some kind, or are there any super unique abilities?" Oop, this just had a pop up. There we go. That you can think of, like Bash from Ori 2, Crystal Jump from Hollow Knight, etc., and so forth. Excited to hear what you think. Thanks as always, and have a great weekend. It's so funny that you wrote in. I wanted to acknowledge you, Connor, because I remarked to my wife when I was playing it, I was like, oh, there's the double jump when I got it. Because there is just certain things you get in these games that always, and in my opinion, that's what makes Shadow Complex so unique, is that it's really not, it's like one of the few games that's really not about any of that. It's about weapons, like specific, it's almost like Metroid more. And so it's always the double jump, but combining the double jump with the dash, both inevitable, to unlock bigger and bigger parts of the castle or wherever you are. Love that shit. So getting the double jump, because it lets you know as you look at your map, it's like, oh, I can double jump now. I can go back around and see what I missed. I love doing that kind of stuff. And Mitch Fallon wrote in and said, "Hey, Sacred Gents, now that it's out in the wild, what are your thoughts on Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown? As a fan of the series and Metroidvania games, I'm having a blast. The controls are fluid, the environments are beautiful, and the progression and exploration balance feels pitch perfect. While the story is mediocre and the boss battles are kicking my ass, the boss battles are hard. It's clear that a lot of love and care was poured into this game, and I am truly appreciating my experience with it. Do you think Ubisoft will see much of a return on their investment with this game? The reviews are stellar across the board, but I wonder how many enthusiasts like me will put their money down on a big budget Metroidvania like this, versus how many will wait for it to go on sale or come to PS Plus or Game Pass. The critical reception has been great, which I think helps, but it's unclear how many people bought it. We'll find out in the coming weeks. I do think that there are some concerning signs, although we're recording this only a week out. I did look this up because I did notice this, is that only 6 in 10 people are even getting to the first boss that play the game. And by the time you get to the second boss, it's a third. This isn't a very long game. It doesn't require like an incredible amount out of you. I've probably played it for 10 to 12 hours, maybe something like that. It's going to say a lot longer on PSN. Those numbers are always wrong. It's not, that's not how long I've been playing it. It says I played fucking The Witcher for like 150 hours. I can promise you that's not true. So I do think that there are some reasons to be concerned about its stickiness with some people. We'll see how that adapts as people have more access to the game, because a week isn't an incredible amount of time. But I feel like this game fits within the mold of the old UbiArt games, and it's not quite as stylistically different as a Child of Light or a Valiant Hearts, or even the redesigned 2D Rayman games that were so awesome that came out on PS3, Vita.
Yeah.
This game kind of fits within that spirit. I don't know if there's any money to be made here. It does seem a little expensive again for what it is, but it is very high quality for what it is as well. So yeah, shout out to Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. I wouldn't broadly recommend it unless you're into Metroidvanias, but if you are, certainly you're going to want to add this one to your repertoire, because it's certainly a game you'll want to familiarize yourself with. And I imagine from a design point of view, just simply on the map. See, I always talk about the little things, and this game does a lot of that. And the little stuff compounds to make big differences. And they figured out something new in Metroidvania, which is kind of incredible. I mean, there are hundreds of Metroidvania games. So it sounds so stupid. And like you were saying, it's in Zelda, like the icon thing, but just that screenshot functionality, even it's like, wow, that's actually kind of interesting. Because I don't think anyone even approaches these to try to do anything new anymore. Now that's just about fun, which is fine. So yeah, shout out to them. All right, my friends, let's get into the news. There are 3 news items this week. I wanted to talk about this first one extensively. I wrote up a very long write-up this week for this because I wanted to give everyone the proper context. We're basically existing in a cull right now, in the workplace, in the games industry. And I want to give everyone the information on what's going on and some different interpretations from different people in the industry. So this is going to take a minute to read, but I think it'll give you the appropriate context. And then we'll have a lot to say on the other side. So sit down for a minute and relax. Number 1. The gaming industry is going through an enormous outchurn of talent via layoffs, and perhaps it's time to talk about it more in depth here on the show, especially in light of some recent events, articles, and so on. According to the Sad Games Industry Layoffs website, which tracks gaming-related job losses to as specific a number as can be found in the data, while 8,500 people lost their jobs in gaming in 2022, that number grew significantly in 2023, going up to 10,500. But while these numbers are high, they may only be the beginning, because as of recording this episode in late-ish January, some 6,000 people have already lost their jobs in gaming, with 11 months and change to go. GDC, the Game Developers Conference, both an annual series of industry-centered shows and an organizing body, polled 3,000 developers from indie studios to AAA over most of 2023. 7% of those polled were themselves laid off, with 26% more having experienced layoffs in their studios, but surviving themselves. 56% describe themselves as concerned to some degree with layoffs in the next 12 months. One respondent, according to website Video Games Chronicle, said the following, analyzing the situation succinctly, quote, "Studios grew too quickly during the pandemic and people are spending less money on games during a cost of living crisis. The bubble is sadly bursting. I hope it creates new startups that revolutionize how we develop games and sets a precedent for larger studios to follow by," end quote. What perhaps stopped us in the hardcore console space from taking closer notice is that if you track who is getting laid off, it wasn't exactly striking close to home. If you browse the 2022 layoff numbers, for instance, you will not have heard of most of the companies listed, who are in the casual and mobile spaces primarily. But in 2023, the laser started getting far closer to the familiar companies, not only closer to the types of games we play, but better known quantities, period. And I listed a bunch here. Versus Evil, First Contact, Rovio, Codemasters, New World Interactive, Congregate, Amazon, Bungie, Media Molecule, Xbox, Frontier Development, Zen Studios, Team 17, Ubisoft, Epic, Telltale, Visual Concepts, Blizzard, Volition, Gearbox, BioWare, Harebrained Schemes. I already said Activision once, I think. Activision, Striking Distance, CD Projekt, Niantic, Relic, Firaxis, Pixel, Opus, Deviation, EA, Ready at Dawn, Private Division, Respawn, 343, Bethesda, and Wizards of the Coast, amongst many, many, many others. As you can see, no one is immune, except perhaps Nintendo. And the 2024 numbers have already consumed thousands of slots. Riot Games just laid off 11% of its staff, Twitch 30% of its staff, and Unity some 1,800 heads, larger than most studios by orders of magnitude. And it's worth noting at this point that I didn't write into this because we were coming in kind of hot, but Microsoft and Xbox just laid off 2,000 people. So just what's going on here? As noted, overinvestment and extreme bullishness during COVID combined with people less engaged with gaming than they were during that period for obvious reasons. In other words, it was really, really bad forecasting, and now everyone pays the price. An anonymous CEO of a large gaming company told website GamesIndustry.biz this, quote, "If 2023 was the year of layoffs, 2024 will be the year of closures. Not just developers, but publishers, media, service companies. There are just too many unprofitable businesses in video games. We're looking at up to 2 years of pain," end quote. Another anonymous publishing executive told the company, quote, "Too many games were greenlit in 2020 and 2021. We need to get back to pre-pandemic levels in terms of a release schedule, and that's probably going to take 2 years. You can already see publishers signing fewer games. That's happening everywhere. The stores are saturated, not just Steam, and the games just aren't delivering the levels they were. Competition isn't the biggest factor, but it is a challenge, especially when you consider how much disposable income people have at the moment. It's also not just the number of new games you're competing with, but all the old games and live service games that are there and doing huge numbers," end quote. Meanwhile, tech writer Matthew Ball, writing on his blog, goes deeply into all the success gaming saw in 2023, which is bringing in more money than ever and eating TVs and films' respective lunches in revenue. But it's all a facade. He writes in part, quote, "There are several reasons behind the many layoffs, but the first may be the most important. It's also the most overlooked and counter narrative. Video game revenues are falling, and the explanations and excuses touted throughout 2021 and 2022 have since been invalidated and in the process put darker clouds over forecasts that were already being revised downward. In nominal terms, U.S. consumer spend on video games was $57.2 billion in 2023, up only 1.1% over 2022, which had fallen 5% versus 2020-21. Compared to 2021, spending in 2023 is therefore still down 4.1%. Compared to 2020, revenues are up only 2%, with an anemic 0.7% compound annual growth rate. These are not great numbers. And these numbers are nominal in a time that has seen 40-year highs in inflation, with average US CPI up 19% since 2019. That's fucking brutal. In real terms, US gaming revenues in 2023 are 2.1% under 2022, 14.3% under 2021, and 13.6% under 2020, and up only 6.9% from 2019. In contrast, real GDP growth in the United States has averaged 2% annually since 2019 and 3.1% since 2020, meaning that the gaming industry has fallen well short of the average sector for 3 years. This shortfall occurred despite the first industry-wide price hike for premium games in a decade, end quote. Meanwhile, storied game developer Jonathan Blow of Braid and The Witness fame said the following on Twitter, perhaps putting a finer point on the situation, quote, "If you think there have been a lot of games industry layoffs, you really haven't seen anything yet. Companies always under lay off in the first 1 or 2 waves because they don't want things to be as bad as they are. But 2021 overhiring, unproductive remote work, the shift towards hiring people for reasons beside ability, a generational shift towards disillusionment, nihilism, and a refusal to find meaning in work, Bidenomics, soaring pay in an attempt to compete with tech companies, and several other factors have been just as devastating. And we are only beginning to see the results. This is likely to keep going for a while before we see a recovery, which will necessarily need to be focused on smaller teams where the people on the teams actually work," end quote. So a lot of different opinions there that I want to present, a lot to consume. Dustin, let's go to you first. We can pull at this in any number of directions, but I'm wondering what sticks out to you.
So, first of all, without saying, of course, this sucks. People losing their jobs, not fun, not cool. And the thing that really rings through when I was thinking when you were reading all this is that there was all that explosive growth during and after the pandemic. And so a lot of companies just immediately reacted to that, hiring and making a bet in a lot of ways about the growth of the industry. And I guess in some sense, I can understand that, where if you're seeing increasing numbers and, things along those lines, from a fiduciary standpoint, you should be investing to be prepared for the growing wave. But the end result, when things don't work out, is the thousands of people's lives that you have, in many cases, if it's not remote work, just up and rearrange their lives in order to come work for you. And you were part of a bet that didn't work out. And now you're fucked, so the company can be okay. And that sucks. I think that there are other factors at play too, as well, in terms of consolidation being so big on top of all of these other things, where in the case of Microsoft, I saw this going around. I can't remember the exact tweet, but when you're Microsoft and you have all of these different publishing capabilities, and then you purchase publishers, you have a lot of redundancies and duplicates of different people that it doesn't make sense to have 2 separate publishing arms like that. There's some areas where you can combine things. And I think that's just a natural aspect of mergers. And it's unfortunate, of course, but that makes a lot of sense to me. It's just that there's all these mergers on top of all of these other things as well. It kind of feels like the perfect storm. Big bets on growths, mergers, and then severe inflation at the same time, just kind of all coming together for what we're seeing now. So that's my high level thoughts. But like you said, there's a million ways we could take this.
Chris, where do you want to begin?
I don't know. I guess I'm just really... I understand the inclination to assume that, we're experiencing an unprecedented skyrocketing wave of engagement with our medium during the pandemic. But at the same time, I really can't fathom how people didn't understand that was an unwise thing to do. I don't. It feels like something that you should really think about for maybe 20 minutes before you come to the obvious conclusion that, like, oh yeah, this probably isn't going to last forever, and we might actually be in a better position to just kind of stay exactly where we are and reap the benefits of this growing wave, and not really overextend ourselves than we would. Taking on a bunch of new overhead, taking on a bunch of new people, rearranging their lives, and then fucking them in the process. Like, this all feels so. I guess for me, I look at it and I'm just like, this. So much of this was so easily avoidable if people could have just had a basic understanding of, hey, we're not going to be in a pandemic for 5 to 10 years. We were clearly going to get out of it in like a year or two. I'm just baffled by the decision making, I guess, that kind of led to this. Granted, some of this, obviously, it's external economic forces, like you said, mergers and acquisitions also play a part in it. But I guess a lot of it really is just that bet that so many people made that I feel like even your most basic layman could have told you would have been unwise. I don't get it.
Joe Goddard wrote into us on Patreon. Says, hey, boys, what are your thoughts on the reaction to the Riot Games layoff? So this is one major part of the Riot, the layoffs we're talking about recently, of course, the League of Legends studio. Riot is providing a frankly amazing package, including severance pay, cash payouts, continued benefits, and more. And yet there is still a big backlash against the company. So if you guys haven't seen this, they're offering 6 months severance, which is insane. Plus, I think, cash payouts based on how long you've been there, plus like retention of all the different perks you get for a long period of time. It's very, very good.
Yeah.
He goes on, obviously getting laid off sucks, and there can be maybe questions about managerial issues, but I feel like people having recently been getting this strange idea that they are entitled to their positions, while to me, risk of layoffs is just part of being in the workforce. Also, frankly, if it was really so unbelievable or a major loss for some of these devs to have been laid off, I don't think they would have been chosen to be laid off in the first place. Curious to get your thoughts on the reaction to this and other recent layoffs in general. I mean, Joe, I think what you're saying is true, although I think it's a little cold in the sense that, like, there are layoffs and consequences for bad business at different levels for different reasons. And there are times that companies fail and games fail because they're not talented enough to do what they're trying to do. But to Dustin's point specifically, I think, and what you were saying too, Chris, about pandemic gaming and all the rest, is this really was due to bad forecasting. And that really can only be blamed on management. Like, you can't really be mad at people for accepting jobs in a position where they were expected that they were going to need that many people. And though this is a right sizing, and though I've said many times that I think many tech companies need to right size, and I do think that Twitter was a great example of this, like, we make fun of it and all the rest, but it is surviving with like 10% of the people that work there. And it really does go to show you that I do believe, and I've read extensively about this from, anonymous CEOs admitting it, where they're like, that is an example that a lot of people look at being like, what are we doing? Certainly we don't need to lay off 90% of our staffs, but do we need all of these people? And so I think that there's different ways to look at it, but I think that this particular gaming overgrowth is due to bad forecasting. And so that goes to your number counters, your bean counters. And that's disappointing. I think and I do want to differentiate, like, because these just happened this morning, but the Xbox layoffs are different. Those really have nothing to do with that. The Xbox layoffs have to do with merging two companies, although this is what a lot of you asked for. What did you think was going to happen? Oh, Xbox is going to get Activision and Raven's going to make Singularity. It's like, no, they're not. They're going to make Call of Duty forever. And all of the Activision studios I've been reading about it, all of them have had layoffs. And then a bunch of Xbox teams have had layoffs. Mike Ybarra is out. Totally questionable about, again, letting some of the greatest executive talent you have walk out the door and keeping the people that got Xbox into this position in the first place. A little strange. But I think, generally speaking, you have to kind of differentiate now that that's a product of, like, just vulture style capitalism of consolidation, which is what everyone wanted. right? Everyone was like, oh, it's going to be the best thing ever. Well, they canceled Blizzard's game. They laid a bunch of people off, including people that had been there 10, 15 years at these various studios right after Xbox acquired them. And you're going to get Call of Duty and Diablo, and you're going to like it. And Overwatch. I hope you like it. That's what you're getting. All right. BD Squat wrote in. Said, hey, Sacred Boys. If you're going to talk about Riot layoffs, I anticipate the obligatory CEO take less money opinion and wanted to play devil's advocate. Colin, not saying this is you, but let's say Last Stand was publicly traded. At the start of this year, you gave everyone a raise. Patreon fees went up and Zencaster raised its subscription fee. But you kept the Patreon prices the same. You could say you'll take a cut to keep the business profitable for shareholders. Next year, same thing. Raises, rising costs, but the Patreon tier stay the same. You take another cut to keep the company profits up. Third year, so on and so forth. At some point, something has to give. Tencent used the money they made to invest in other areas. Those investments haven't borne fruit. Money is going in, not enough money is coming out. But you need to stay profitable. It's unfortunate. I feel for the team at Riot. I work at a large company and know my number could be called at any time. You often talk about the mid and long term in games. That's what these decisions are, and a CEO pay cut doesn't solve your problems. I'm ready to be torn apart, so I'll hang up and listen. I totally agree with what you're saying here, but you have to understand that the CEOs... I'm not this I think everyone knows. I'm not this like anti-capitalist, anti-executive dude. Like, I'm really not. But they made the choices. It's not to say that they should give up their money. It's to say that they should be removed. If you overexpanded your company and then have to lay off 10, 20, some of these studios are laying 50%. The studio that's making the last Ronin TMNT game laid off half their staff, Black Forest. If that happens under you, you should be fired. It doesn't mean your ship should be rudderless. It means there should be a new CEO. Now, I do agree that people are being like, well, the CEO should take a pay cut. It's like people that do say that don't know what they're talking about. Like how little money that would free up for them and how little that would buy them in terms of time and all of that. It's like when people talk about Satoru Iwata taking a pay cut at Nintendo, he did that in solidarity. He didn't do that because it would affect the bottom line. We're talking about several $1 million. I mean, does anyone understand how much money it costs to run these major businesses? That's like their fucking lunch budget. You know?
Yeah.
So for me, I look at it and I understand that on one hand, it's like, yeah, everyone needs to shut up about CEOs and executives taking pay cuts. It's about sustainability. That doesn't make your product sustainable. That like gives you a bit of time until you have, it's the same thing, frankly, about people being like, raise taxes on the rich. It's like, that's totally fine, but eventually you won't be able to do that. And you're still going to be in your same problem because you have a spending problem. Right. And so, I don't think it's not to say that argument makes sense, but it is to say that I'm surprised that people can stay in charge of some of these companies when they have to hemorrhage all of these people based on economic realities that those people had no responsibility for forecasting, but people at the top did. That's not like a fucking communist, sympathetic standpoint. That's just reality. If this company started making bad decisions and everyone suffered because of it, it would be my fault. If the show started to suck because you guys weren't performing, that would be your fault.
Yeah.
And those are two different things. So right now we're in vertical A, right? Like there's no other way to put it. That's what pisses me off. Is like it is true that the decision makers at the top of a lot of these places do not suffer. If they do suffer, they get golden parachutes. They also make 10x, 20x, 30x, what everyone makes there anyway. So they have plenty of money. And that is unfair. Do I think that, and I hate to say this, do I think that Microsoft and Xbox and Activision as entities look at this as being like, maybe we get rid of some low performers, people we don't really need. So obviously, like you were saying, Dustin, superfluous positions, all the rest. Yeah. But I don't know. I just don't understand what people don't get about, on that hand, the consolidative efforts and what that's going to do to the workforce. And then on the other hand, bad decision making. It reminds me, again, I've said this so many times, I am always flabbergasted how people get into, we said this about G4 and the G4 revival. It's like someone at NBC greenlit a $200 million reboot of G4. Can you even imagine that?
It's wild. It's wild.
So to me, that always reminds me, just as an example, an anecdote, like there are people in positions of power that don't know dick.
Well,
They don't know
the other thing
dick.
About that too is you know why that happened, right? Do you know the reason why G4 got
It was the
rebooted?
son, right, of the investor or whatever?
Yeah, the investor, like, oh, my son likes this. These people should be far away from all of these decisions, but they're not. And not only that, but like they've been there for a long time. So they're just kind of like trusted because it's just like, oh, well, they've been here forever. It's like, yeah, they've been here forever because people are unwilling to get rid of them. And that's kind of the problem that we're making too with this, like this new, like Jonathan Blow said, like people don't find value in their work. It's like, and that's their fault? Like, how is that their fault? Of course they're not, because you don't have these positions where people are working for companies for 20 years anymore. They're getting laid off every 9 months. Nobody's working their way up to from QA to like, that's an old story. That's ancient news now. So of course people are going to like not feel fucking get value out of their work. Are you kidding? 50% of the people polled are like, over 50% of the people polled are like concerned about whether or not they'll have a job in the upcoming year. How could you exist in that ecosystem and be like, oh man, I'm really proud. Yeah, I'm really excited to be in this company. That culture's gone.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and like I don't know. I don't know how many more disasters it's going to take. I don't know how much. I don't know. I feel largely disillusioned with just the royal hour, just ability to just understand when something is important enough to actually, just sincerely address it. Like it is wild to me that I mean there was a whole thing. It's getting a little political, but like there was a whole thing earlier in the week about Nikki Haley talking about like, yeah, we want the retirement age to be 70. Do you understand France burned? France was on fire for less than that.
Yeah, didn't they want to raise it from like 62 to 64 or something like that? And they like went fucking ballistic.
And France was on fire. And like we're just like, oh yeah, 65 to 70. And we're like, okay. There's such a passivity here that is so disheartening that it's just like, all right, we'll lose millions of jobs, we'll lose a ton of money, and then companies will close because
you lose your dignity too.
Yeah, and you lose everything. You lose everything because people are too stupid to manage their money. People are too comfortable in the positions of power that they are in because they've managed their money so poorly, but they're so like studious and important that they're just unwilling to sacrifice anything, or people are unwilling to hold them to account. And so we get really poorly managed companies playing with people's lives that don't deserve to be played with. And it's infuriating. It bothers me deeply. But,
it bothers me too, just in the sense. That's why, listen, I've admitted before, if someone came up to me with an extraordinary amount of money and asked me to sell out, of course I would consider selling Last Stand to a publication or something like that. But the reality is that I would really be stupid to do that because vultures get involved in profitable, steady businesses like this and ruin them. And I would have to really be checked 3, 4, 5 times by the people around me to remind me that it's like no amount of money is worth selling something down the river that doesn't even need to grow to survive. And when you get public monies in on these things, it's what people need to be reminded about the stock market. I think some people are confused about stock, right? Like you don't buy, because I really think some people think this. Oh, you buy stock at this price and then you hold it and hopefully it becomes worth more and you sell it later. I'm like, that's one part of buying stock. The other part is extracting constant value out of it. You don't just buy something at $50 and be like, down the road, I'm going to sell it for 75. It's like, no, you buy it at 50 and then every quarter you're hopefully getting a dividend out of it. And that's where the constant growth mentality comes from.
Right.
That's why trying to keep family mom and pop businesses just as a rule of based capitalism is vital. We were seeing this in In-N-Out in California. They're closing a restaurant in Oakland, which they're like, this restaurant is wildly popular and profitable, but it's dangerous around here. We just can't be here anymore. A company would never do that, without like a bunch more like hand wringing and going to the, like when a Safeway leaves an underserved neighborhood, it's like a fucking 5-year fiasco. But a small company can just be like, we're not doing this.
Right.
And that level of being nimble and even just shoving money back in people's faces and people who don't want or need your money is great. That's why with the people I have had people offer to invest in Last Stand, and I've said there's nothing to invest in. Like it's my company and it's all of us together doing this product, and we don't need more.
Yeah.
And I just, that constant growth mentality comes from publicly traded companies, and it sucks. But that's the big mistake. Like people are like, why does it always have to be like this? It has to be like this because there are people with stock portfolios, and that's great. But there are people, and I have a stock portfolio, but it's like there are people with stock portfolios that are like, where's the money? Like, and if you don't provide the money, then they sell off and make the company worth less. It's kind of like everyone having a gun to each other's head. And it's the same reason why it's kind of funny when Rooster Teeth offered to give us, I don't remember what it was, like $1.5 million for no part of the company, just as an investment. And we're like, we don't want your money. That's the last thing we want. So I don't know, man. So in this case, again, we're talking about vertical A, bad management. And that's basically it. And you could even argue that when a bad game comes out, it's still the bad management's problem. Because there's a lot of untalented people working in games. I mean, I think that's what Jonathan Blow is getting at. And by the way, I should note this. Got in touch with Jonathan Blow, and as of the time we're recording this, at least anyway, he said he would be on the show, and we're going to have him on Sacred Symbols Plus to talk about some of the things that he was discussing, which I'm excited about. And I also got in touch with the tech writer I cited, Matthew Ball, who laid out all those numbers for us and what I read. I haven't heard back from him yet, but he apparently is personal friends with Gene, and Gene has told me that he can basically lubricate the wheels for this. Cool. So we're going to be able to have conversations about the industry with both of these people that have, I think, somewhat different opinions. I'm especially keen on Jonathan Blow because Jonathan Blow is in a position. For people that don't know, Jonathan Blow made the game Braid, and he made the game The Witness. Mm-hmm. And he's in a position very wealthy and successful where he can kind of speak his mind. And he speaks his mind from what I would consider, what I interpret as a conservative point of view, which I think is, and I don't know if he would consider himself one or not, I don't know. But it comes off like that to me. And I'm very interested to see where he thinks the business is, because it's, as you said, Chris, he's talking about something I think a little different, which is disillusionment and nihilism, which you say makes a lot of sense when you consider some of the situations that people are finding themselves in. But unproductive remote work, I'd love to know more about that. And and what people say are like fake email jobs. That's like the term that's often used.
Yeah.
Like people that aren't really doing anything in studios. And I think there's a lot of that.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think it's just like you would, I mean, quite literally, like you would have to be deranged not to be disillusioned or nihilistic about working in games at this point. Like, unless you're like a really even if you are a protected guy, like I didn't think in a million years they would get rid of Michael Salvatore at Bungie, but like, all right.
Yeah. You become expensive at some point.
Yeah, for sure.
But the more secure you become, the more expensive you become.
Yeah. So there is no, there's a
snake eating itself in Ouroboros.
Yeah. Work in fucking software, work somewhere else. Like, why would you? Yeah.
I think there is something, I think that's something very deep that you've touched on about. Some people might call it late stage capitalism, but just this commoditization of everything in this churn, people ask, like, why doesn't this happen in Japan really? And the answer is because they don't tend to treat their people like pieces of shit at Japanese companies. Sometimes they do.
Yeah.
But I've said it many times, there is a term for a window facing job at a Japanese company where someone gets old, but they don't want to get rid of them. So they just put them somewhere and let them keep their dignity. I'm not saying that's an answer either, because the Japanese economy basically hasn't grown in 30 years. So like, it's not like they have it all figured out. Like the yen is worthless, and the Japanese economy is all fucked up. So
there's always going to be problems, but like, it's a matter of just like the system that we've built, which is like fairly modern, like I feel like people really kind of forget how modern a lot of things that we assume are really long-standing are. I mean, this is really separate. This is a very different conversation, but like, I mean, like I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about just the premise of like specifically a nuclear family where it's just the mom, dad, and the child or whatever, right? And it's like it used to be like the community would raise the children. Like it used to be like, and I remember this. I remember when I was a kid, my parents would leave me with like neighbors and stuff because they had been in the building for so long that it was like a community, you know? And that's a very, very, that's way older than the concept of like just mom and dad handle everything and everybody else stay away. It's way, way fucking older. But now what do you have? You have people like, oh, well, I can't afford to live here for more than a year because they're going to hike my rent. So I got to go somewhere else. So you're not building those communities. And so that's fracturing. And now like we have like a hyper fixation on like, okay, well, stay away. Everybody else stay away. It's me and my son. And that's it. And that's kind of happening.
To me or my son again.
Yeah. And I feel like that's like a small microcosm, but I feel like that's a great example of just like what's happening at large with just like how, you know, capitalistic incentives work. I feel like they work for a while, but at a certain point, it does reach kind of like a fever pitch where you got to decide like what the fuck you're going to prioritize. And I feel like we're seeing that now, man. We're
very, very well said.
I don't know. Yeah, we're getting on tangents, but
no, who cares? I mean, it's very insightful. It's important. This is all intertwined. I think.
Yeah,
we have a crisis of just generally an economic crisis in the country of like too many people going without basic security that you'd think would be able to be provided in some reasonable way by the richest country in the history of humankind. And
right. Yeah.
And it is deeply political because people look at what's happening at the border and they're like, well, why are we letting all these people in when we can't even take care of ourselves? And people look at overseas military adventures and they're like, we're giving these people billions of dollars to pay their fucking government, you know, bureaucrats, and we can't pay, and we have people on the street here. And it's just like, no one seems to give a shit about anything beyond like what's immediately in front of them, even though the outcomes are predictable. If you would just listen to a broader range of opinions and take into account the blatantly obvious. So getting back to games, it's like, you said it, Chris, it's like COVID is not forever. So why are you investing like people are going to play games like this forever? They're not going to play games like this forever. And people knew that because not everyone made those bets. So I don't know. It is frustrating. And then it falls on the people that don't have two nickels to rub together.
Yeah.
Basically to figure it out. And that's the biggest, that it's totally fucked. Like, that's why I say this as like someone who's very blessed. It's like, I couldn't imagine living like that and having that level of insecurity. It's what you're saying, Chris. It's like, I had that at one time, but things seemed, when I was like living paycheck to paycheck, when I was 22 or whatever, 23, it was also 2007, 2008. Yeah. So it was the financial crisis, but things seemed brighter. Like there seemed to be like, you could do it. You could climb out. And I do feel like the paths are narrowing. The ability to get gainful employment is narrowing. Again, I use this word, but the commoditization of all the products we consume means people don't care how they're made. Mm-hmm. And then that puts people out of business. And it's more important for people to have $200 million instead of $100 million.
Right.
But then there are 1,000 people with nothing. And that's crazy, because I don't even know why you would want to live a life like that. I want lots and lots and lots of money too, but I don't want it ill-begotten on the backs of fucking people that have to suffer because of it. And so yeah, is it political? But yeah, it's true. It sucks. It is fucked up. And that's why I think the AI fight and all the rest is so important to have, because it's the next, it's not even the next, it's another play in this decoupling of humanity from meaning.
Yeah.
Like what people, I don't know what the fuck people don't get about that, but
yeah.
I feel for all the people, and you said at the top, Dustin, I feel bad for all the people that are laid off, but it's already like, we all know that it's like there is so much under the surface that needs to be gotten to. And I feel blessed to be in a position where I feel secure. I feel the company's secure, and, you know, knock on wood, maybe this all falls apart too, but I feel like we've set things up to be flexible. And I am in a position where it's like, if I make less to help the company do well, I'd still be fine, and have put myself in a position to be that way. And that's what I want to say to people is like, what can you do to positively affect this? If you're a business owner listening, you should certainly treat your people with respect. But as far as the consumer is concerned, I really do think it is important to put your money where your mouth is. Buy games you like, support subscription services you like, support the artists you like, whatever the case might be. Like it really is going to come down to that. And as the embers burn out and a new growth comes in the games, it is going to be what I think Jonathan Blow is describing, which are smaller, detached teams that again operate the way things used to be, which was let's find a publisher and make a game, as opposed to this consolidative effort, this scrubbing of everything, the games of service, everything's a games as a service, everything is a fucking Fortnite clone, everything is vanilla, everything is cartoonish, no style, no substance. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a bummer. All right. Here's another bummer. Number 2. It was just last episode that we discussed word of an Until Dawn film in the works from PlayStation Productions. The 6th crossover movie announced alongside already released titles like Uncharted and Gran Turismo and upcoming film projects for Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima, and Gravity Rush. But now, this week, we get a vital rumor from a great source that makes this entire situation make a little more sense. After all, why work on a film for a one-off game that's somewhat obscure and released on the previous console early in its life? Well, according to a French website, DLabs, which we have already cited today on this show, which is strange, a reliable source on PlayStation leaks in the past, Until Dawn isn't only being re-released for PlayStation 5, but it's also coming to PC. More interesting even is that its reveal is potentially very soon, according to the rumor, in the next couple of weeks. This could sync up with some rumors of a state of play that's in the works, and this would make sense as Sony still needs to talk about Rise of the Ronin, put a date on Stellar Blade, and so on, and maybe even make a final push for Helldivers and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth alike. This French website thus reports that Until Dawn may be in the mix in that same show. It's purportedly been in the works for more than a year, indicating that it's a remaster and not any sort of remake. And it may be coming from Nix's, the Dutch PC porting team Sony purchased to do just this. The greater mystery is if the game's original studio, Supermassive, is working on it in any capacity. Chances are minimal, as while they were once a steady second-party partner, they've since been purchased outright by film company Nordisk and seem to have a deepening relationship with Bandai Namco, with the Dark Pictures anthology and other projects in the Kiln 2, including Little Nightmares 3, also for Bandai Namco, and the casting of Frank Stone with Behavior, which is a Dead by Daylight related product. At a 350-person headcount, they may therefore be taxed, and 2015's Until Dawn remains their biggest PlayStation project to date. Until Dawn, a choice-based horror game about a group of teens isolated and in danger in the Canadian Rockies, found a surprisingly sizable audience upon release on PS4 some 5 years after it first entered development as a PlayStation 3 Move-enabled title. However, it appears they and Sony could never get on the same page about continuing the trend, and what would have been successive Until Dawn-like titles instead came to Bandai Namco by way of the annualized Dark Pictures anthology, which continues to this day. Can we stop with this already? It is already playable on PS5. And I know we make this argument about other games, but I think Until Dawn, it's like, what are we going to get? The Order 1886 next? I don't understand. Killzone Shadowfall? Infamous Second Son? Until Dawn just seems strange to me, though I know that they are certainly trying to take advantage of the confluence of the film and getting this on modern hardware, putting it on PC where it probably would thrive. And by the way, Chris, I was just thinking the hysterical mods that are going to go into that game.
Oh, yeah.
On PC are going to be awesome. Just absolutely amazing. So, Dustin, it seems like you're eager to speak on this stuff.
Oh, I want to ask you, because I can feel the comments flowing through me. You have no problem with Last of Us Part 1 and 2.
Yeah,
well,
those are
Part 2 in
iconic.
particular.
Those are iconic games, in my opinion. I guess that would be the difference.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I think The Last of Us Part 2 is a little egregious. I mean, I'm happy for it because I like the game, but
yeah,
I don't know. I get what people are. I'm surprised by your nonplussed about it. It's
I know. Well,
it's how many of these old games are we going to get? You know, after a while, it kind of gets a little old. Yeah, go ahead. All right, go ahead.
I made no statement on what I think. You inferred that from what I asked.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, here's what I think. I think it's dumb. Because this one, especially if you play Until Dawn on PS5, I believe, if I remember correctly, it has an unlocked frame rate, so it plays at 60 FPS on PS5. So if they do this PS5 port, I would hope that it's a free upgrade and a re-release. Maybe they, at most, $10, but you'd have to make an argument for maybe some additional content, which I don't really know what that would look like. But I think the PC release makes sense, moving that over as well. But this is back to the PlayStation synergy. They got a movie. They want this. It all ties together, and the reason they're doing it is because it works. In some sense, to me, it makes sense. Where if you're releasing something with an IP you own, and you want to sell games because you're in the business of selling games, be like, oh well, it's the old PS4 version that came out all this time ago. I think it makes sense that they're like, oh, let's bring it up to speed, even if it still looks really good and plays really well and has 60 FPS. Maybe it's 4K, it has DualSense features, things like that. Maybe they add some other stuff. That makes sense to me to upgrade it. Is it needed or necessary for especially a lot of us that have already played it? No. But again, there's a lot of new players all the time. Maybe someone who skipped it. Why not? Again, this is the corporate aspect. Why not have a product available for them? That makes sense to me. So the one other thing I wanted to add is I saw while we were recording, Wario64 tweeted out that some PSN regions are pulling the current PS4 release of Until Dawn, and it's showing not available for purchase in Australia and Germany, but it's still available in the US.
Interesting. Very interesting.
So
good eye.
A lot of things coming together. We talked about Death Stranding getting potentially news soon. Now this news, I would expect we're going to have a state of play within the next 30 days.
Where are you on this, Chris? Until Dawn? You, depending on who you ask, you star in you're a co-star in Until Dawn.
Oh, that was really annoying. I don't know, man. I think Until Dawn to me, it's in that weird territory where it's old enough where it's like, yeah, okay. It's kind of in that Bloodborne territory where I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't come to PC or native already. Like it's kind of bizarre to me that that's the case, but the synergy is really what, from a business standpoint, makes it make sense. Do I think it would benefit at all from a native PS5 version? No. No. It'll be, I guess, native 4K maybe, which will be nice for something that you basically watch. But like this it doesn't speak to me at all. Like I'm not like enthralled by the idea of like, oh man, I can't wait to see the bells and whistles of playing Until Dawn on the next console when it already kind of functions as if it already is there. This is kind of it's the weird nature of this generation where it's really the first generation that we've had this, because PS3 to PS4 were very different. They were just completely different games. I remember specifically even the generation previous to that, from PS2 to PS3, like the game would come out with the same title and it would be just a completely different game made by a completely different studio. You're like, oh, this is the PS2 version of Spider-Man 3 and it's a completely different fucking game. But now it's like, PS4 version of Until Dawn, like PS5 version of Until Dawn. It's like, okay, what is that even?
It's just boring.
Yeah, it's bland.
And I also just feel like, that video of that woman from like the 70s was like, this is boring. I'm bored. You're boring. Like, this is kind of how I'm starting to feel about this first party shit and second party shit now, where it's like, this is specifically second party, but it is true that I haven't played Until Dawn in probably more than 8 years. So it is I don't really remember very much about it at this point. I will replay it. So I'm part of the problem. And it was really good as I remember. Maybe I'll feel differently about it now, but I think also there's a point of taking advantage. Obviously, they want the synergy and all of that, but as we said last week when we said that the game looked like it was coming to PS5 and PC, that a couple of really famous people are in it, and they probably have their perpetual right to use them. So are you going to be able to, like, imagine Rami Malek or whatever his name is, if I'm saying that right, being in 2015 when he's obscure, like Mr. Robot didn't even start yet. And then now you have him here. And that's something you can probably leverage. And it's probably in the work that they can do whatever they want. So what I'll be interested in is if anyone participates, like, did they do any work like new motion capture, new VO, or is it really just going to be a straight up thing? If Nixus is doing it, then I imagine there's really not much to it, which is fine.
It's a port.
Right. Yeah, I would imagine so. And we'll see how it does. Yeah, go ahead.
Is the issue, I guess this could be twofold, because I think that from what I'm understanding you're saying is that it's an issue partially, or partially of why it's annoying is just that it's time spent that's not necessary. Like time spent, the opportunity cost of...
Well, yeah, there is part of it is that I think Nixus can only, I was speaking at this on the Sacred Symbols Plus episode with our upcoming guest, where we were talking like Nixus can't do all the PC porting by itself. That's necessary. So there is some sort of opportunity cost to it because there's other more urgent games that need to be dealt with, I think. So that's number one. But number two is that I just think they don't care because it doesn't matter. But I think that it's like getting gratuitous at this point. It's like, come on, man. Like we're like getting in now until dawn. Like what do you, it bothers me just because of all the PS3 games that are stranded. It's like you guys you don't give a fuck about Killzone. You don't give a fuck about Resistance. You don't care about any of that stuff, but you'll bring over Until Dawn, which we can already play, and then remove it from the PSN. So that now it's this new version, which is fine. But it's just distasteful and boring. It's not to say that it doesn't make sense or that they're not going to make money on it or that's not a good investment or that there isn't good cross-media synergy. It's all those things are true too. It's just those things are all going to happen. They're going to make nice money. Until Dawn will probably be good if their track record's any indication so far, and this will make a lot of sense to them. But I just, as an analyst and a person in this ecosystem, it's just like, man, something new would be nice at some point if you guys get around to it. You know, I do have to say too, like, because that Metal Gear Solid collection is coming out at some point with or volume 2, right?
Presumably with Metal Gear Solid 4,
right,
in it. And if they can figure out, look, if Konami can figure out how to get Metal Gear Solid 4 running on native hardware, I'm going to be extra annoyed.
There's a big difference, though. They have source code.
It's not emulation. Well, do they? Does Konami still have... I don't know. But maybe. I think that's probably true.
I would imagine they still... I mean, there are instances of games like the Kingdom Hearts games had to be decompiled from a retail disc, but...
There's a lot of... I don't know, man. I feel...
How does that happen?
It's just weird to me. It's just weird to me that they haven't figured out the PS3 thing yet. At all. Like, not even once.
Well, it's weird. I said before, and I trust him. I mean, he's a great source, but on Broken Silicon, we were talking over there, and there's this idea that they have this. They have they're doing it one at a time, and that each PS3 game needs to be manipulated in a certain way because they all are like this. Like everyone used the cell architecture differently, so there's no way to really one size fit all it, and that they just want to get like a real confluence, and I think Tom is telling the truth on that. So maybe they're just trying to wait until they get more available, but that's the shit that pisses me off, where no one asked for a lot of things. I don't even want to use that as an excuse. It's just a shame that it's like Infamous 2, Killzone 1, Killzone 2, Killzone 3, Resistance 1, Resistance 2, Resistance 3. It's like, there's a bunch of games that are just like, come on, man. Until Dawn? Fine. All right. Let's see. Oh, Broderick Fleming wrote in and said, hey, Sacred, Deal Labs, which has been a fairly reliable leaker of monthly PS Plus games, has reported a possible announcement of a remake or remaster of Until Dawn. Considering the recent announcement of the movie, how are you guys feeling about Sony's revitalized interest in the game? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to talk about PS Plus. We already answered that, Broderick. I thought specifically you were asking, just in glossing over it, if it was going to be on PS Plus. I was thinking that the answer is yes at some point. All right, number 3, quickly. For reasons completely unknown to anyone, growing French publisher Focus Entertainment is renaming itself to Pull Up Entertainment. Notice that it's what do they call that when it goes frontwards and backwards? The same. There's a word for that.
Him and on.
What is it?
I don't know. No,
you know what I'm talking about? Where a word goes frontwards and backwards? You guys don't know?
No, I've never said something really funny. What'd you say? Him and Han?
Yeah, I said him and Han.
Words front and back. Same.
I don't know.
Palindrome. I knew I'd get there in the end.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Word comes by way of the publisher's third quarter financial results, which shows soft returns in an admittedly quiet time for the entity. But buried later in the release is word that Ubisoft veteran Jeffrey Sardin would be taking the reins as CEO. Upon approving the new CEO, the board of the company also, quote, decided to redraw the group's organization to mark a new transformative stage in its development around 3 complementary activities, end quote. These are described as, quote, firstly, a plan to spin off the group's historical publishing activity, end quote, which will be called Focus Entertainment Publishing. Secondly, they will create, quote, a division dedicated to publishing of independent games and retro gaming, end quote, under the existing Dotemu brand. Finally, their 7 fully owned internal studios, including the Surge dev Deck 13 and Train Simulator dev Dovetail, will be the publisher's so-called, quote unquote, studio division. Later, they reveal, quote, that these 3 divisions will be brought together under a new umbrella, end quote, the aforementioned Pull-Up Entertainment. These changes go into effect across the board on April 1st. Such a move is mysterious, and it's hard to tell from their financial report exactly why they feel the need to do this. Focus was founded back in the mid-90s, and while it's not a huge name by any stretch of the imagination, it is a respected one, and one that seems to be coming on bigger in recent years. Known early in its life primarily in Europe, where it's released tons of PC releases in niche genres like cycling, the publisher worked and continues to work with a coterie of obscure continental developers and didn't even release a top-down console game until 2010. Upcoming games in its catalog include the Don't Nod supernatural action shooter Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, the upcoming long-delayed Warhammer 40k game Space Marine 2 from Saber, and a new Mud Runner game and a Toxic Commando-themed game also from Saber, which is itself owned by Embracer. Recent games published by Focus include 2023 titles like Atomic Heart, Aliens, Darkest Descent, and Atlas Fallen, and in 2022 they published Evil West, A Plague Tale Requiem, and Hard Space Shipbreaker. Other big games under their umbrella include Greedfall, A Plague Tale Innocence, and Farming Simulator. All right. What are our thoughts here on this? What happened here? Did you put double spaces in all of this?
I've been adding spaces to every single listener inquiry throughout the entire episode.
Oh my god!
See if you would notice.
Oh my god, it's driving me insane.
You haven't noticed at all.
No, not until now. God, I hate you.
All right.
So this is just a small news item that probably a lot of people aren't going to notice or pay attention to, but why are they doing this? Focus is a good name. And they just renamed themselves a couple of years ago. Remember, it was like Focus Home Interactive.
Focus Home Interactive, yeah.
Right. Then it became Focus Entertainment. Now they're doing Pull-Up Entertainment. That is a horrible name. It reminds me of Pull-Up Diapers. So you can tell that they have no context for that in France, where that would be like the first thing. Like when I see the word pull-up, it can only be 2 things. Either you're doing an exercise, or it's like the diaper.
It's not.
Guys,
it's not good. It's not good.
It's bad. Why do brands feel the need to rebrand themselves for no reason? Focus is a surprisingly good name. You don't need to do anything. Dustin, what are your feelings on this?
The thing, so yeah, the name is horrible, but I need to add you can't see this because you're listening to the show, but it's I think about the palindrome that the last P is capitalized,
right?
And I can't stand it. When I see it, that last P capitalized, it makes me angry, upset, depressed, all these things. I can't stand that P at the end. And the name is just dumb. So you're right. Focus is a great name. And so, yeah, I don't know what the motivation is here at all, but hope it works out with their pull-up.
It probably
diapers.
won't matter. It's just such a stupid. It's just stupid.
Yeah.
Pull up.
Maybe they could be like, no, we didn't fuck up. You know, we didn't fuck up that whole like owning all that stuff. That was Focus. I'm pull up now. I don't know.
It's bad.
I
wonder if this will make Banishers. This goes live April 1st. So Banishers will be probably the last game under the Focus brand, which will be interesting.
Man.
I would understand renaming yourself to Pull Up if your name was like something bad. But I think for change's sake, I just don't understand this shit at all. And I don't know if you guys share the Pull Up kind of connotation, but I really feel like they could have used an American point of view on that one. Because I am fucking telling you, that's what a lot of people are going to think
That's
of.
a diaper, yeah.
Like,
that'll be their new logo, maybe.
Polyp,
of what?
a polyp, which is like skin growth, right?
Right.
Yeah. All
So
very
that's also
pleasant,
appealing.
all very great, pleasant things to associate with your brands. Shitty diarrhea diapers and skin growths. Wonderful.
Pull up entertainment. All right. Good luck with all that.
Jesus Christ. So bad. It's so bad. It's actually mind-numbingly bad. Like, I can't believe it, kind of.
It sucks.
It sucks.
It totally sucks. All right. Let's get into 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas as we end our episode this week. Of course, I compile 6 more inquiries from the audience over on Patreon to end each episode of Sacred Symbols Plus. I put up a post in the newsfeed each week on Patreon. You respond. I dig questions and comments and concerns out of there. Chris has been furiously adding and then deleting.
I'm taking them away
spaces.
now because now they're making me crazy, as I see.
Oh, it's spreading.
All right. The great Santini wrote in, said, Dear Secret Police, in your recent discussions about diversity initiatives at AAA studios, Colin mentioned that he's tired of people feeling like their race and ethnicity or sexuality is their identity. While I understand and generally agree with his point that no one is defined by those things alone, certainly those are huge parts of what make a person who they are. I'm curious to know what things you 3 boys feel are more significant in determining one's identity. Is it the media we consume, or is it something more nebulous like the way we react to the stimuli around us? I think back to the Walt Whitman quote, I am large, I contain multitudes. Sorry if this was a silly question and maybe I answered it myself, but I am curious to hear all of your thoughts. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, great Santini, for writing in. Thoughtful question. Chris, I remember you taking, I don't want to say umbrage, but you had a different opinion than I did, I think, last week on this topic. So I wanted to go to you first. Do I underplay the role of immutable characteristics in a person's identity? Like, is part of who I am intrinsically white, male, and straight? Or is that just kind of a cursory part of the Venn diagram?
I think everything individually is a cursory part of the Venn diagram. Like, I feel like you being white as a fact is about as superfluous as, like, I like ska. Because that detail by itself can tell you like some things. It can give you like maybe like an inference of like maybe like what your life has been like, or like what what your culture has been like. You know what I mean? Like there's different things that you can infer from that, but like I don't think any one of those things is necessarily more important or uniquely unnecessary, I guess. Is kind of my standpoint, where it's like, I do think, I think it's valuable. Like Miles Morales being Puerto Rican is probably a pretty big part of that character. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be Miles Morales without that detail, but there's certainly more to it than that. It's by itself, it just kind of tells you a lot about a person. Whether or not somebody's straight or not, it might not tell you a lot about the person in the sense that it's information that you might care about, but it is definitely important information to them. You know what I mean? Like it might inform even just something as simple as your sense of humor. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think it's all kind of relative. But my stance has always been just these are all important individual characteristics, and to focus on any one of them as if they are uniquely like any one characteristic is all that I am. That's crazy. But I don't think anybody's necessarily arguing for that. There are some people online that act that way, but I don't think that's largely an issue that people interpersonally have as they're engaging with the world around them, or media that they consume, or their friends and family and strangers and whatnot.
Yeah. All right. Dustin, where are you on this? We'll get your take on this. He asked specifically, if not those things being central, then what would be the central things? I think I make a more nurture over nature argument in this regard. If I was born somewhere else, I would have had a totally different experience, irrespective of my skin color. It just would have been totally different. So like that just, to me, that obvious observation indicates to me that skin deep stuff really can only go so far. It's like a puddle.
Yeah, I think that what Chris said is that there are many elements of how, different identities as far as gender or race or sexuality definitely are part of someone's identity. And I think that key distinction is part, where there are certain people that make one of those elements their entire identity. And that can go for things beyond that. Chris mentioned ska fans, and I thought that was funny because a lot of ska fans, like, that is their identity. So that also is boring, right?
No, but
I
even
like
if,
ska. I like ska.
Dude, me too. Oh, dude.
Even if you-
dude, Real Big Fish.
even if you said, like, you know, I am a podcaster, it's like that by itself isn't that, you know, there's a bunch of those.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what I
that
do.
doesn't- Right.
That's not who I am.
But how would you, like, what is your central like, how would you be like, I am blank? Like, what is the first thing that you would think to put there? It's probably something that is independently superfluous. You know what I mean? It doesn't really tell you much of anything.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I would even say at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
Man, what
Yeah,
am
and
I?
I think-
I don't know.
I think identity, there's an element of what you want your identity to be and what it actually is too.
Right.
Right. Because everyone wants their identity to be kind and caring and thoughtful. And it's like, maybe not all the time, but sometimes maybe in certain ways and not in other ways. But I mean, it's one of those vague terms like identity. Like, what is it your job? Like, Colin, you mentioned, or is our identity podcasters? Is it video game fans? Is it where we live? Is it what we like to eat? Is it what we like to watch? The entertainment? It's all these things. And I think the point, just to, we can go so many different directions and talk about this forever, but it's just that it is boring no matter what, whether it's sex, gender, religion, whatever, or even things like liking ska music or just liking video games or whatever. If you choose one thing to craft your entire identity around with the need to defend it no matter what, whether that's, again, and it's funny how these applies to both things, where people, when it comes to religion, gender, race, feel the need to be this vehement defense of all things and go on the attack. People also do that with less important identities too. Think about how video game people are.
Oh, totally.
If your identity is a Kingdom Hearts fan completely through and through, and then the next Kingdom Hearts game sucks and you have to defend that, whether we see this all the time with different things. So it's about being well-rounded and all these different things that make up a person. But I don't know where I'm going with this at this point.
Well, I do think it's a complicated situation in that I think it does hinge for me, as I said earlier, on just the nurture angle. I simply reject the idea that, and again, it goes into my conversation I had back in the day with Danny O'Dwyer, where he made fun of me for saying, like, you and I have a much different life experience than me and my black neighbor, which is, by the way, 100% true. And he was like aghast by that because it's so reductionist. Like, there's no room for the idea that a black person it wouldn't be defined by their blackness. But I think that that's kind of vital if we're gonna become not colorblind, but color apathetic.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say, because I do think that color blindness is not true. You notice when someone is something.
Yeah.
But the idea is that the noticing and knowing you're noticing is in and of itself a progressive, and I don't mean politically progressive, but a progressive response to wanting to be better,
Right.
And so things that remind us of why we're different in ways we can't control, I think, are insane. I'll say time and time again, the thing that binds everyone is money. And the one
ultimate
commonality that people should take advantage of is their economic status and affect change through that. And that experience, because you said something about like the inference of being white. Well, you can infer things about a person's life, but can you? I mean,
more accurately than you otherwise would, I think.
Yeah,
like,
there's something to that, but I don't think it's all the way there, where
no. You wouldn't be able to like assume literally everything, but like it would. I mean, you can. I feel like if even just simple things like you've seen Pulp Fiction, right?
Yes.
Swap Samuel L. Jackson and John Travolta's characters, but give them their same dialogues. Like you would know something was fucking wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Intrinsically, just because like those are different types of people. They're different people. I don't know. It kind of gets into a more philosophical question, I guess, is like, what does it even mean to have an identity in the first place? Like, is it even really important in the grand scheme of things? Like, I don't know. But in fiction, because that was what we were talking about, really, in the context of like fictional, like kind of like writing and making sure you're doing things correctly. I do think there's like a value in that, like in just understanding it's like, okay, well, this character is this. It might not be all that they are, but it probably would realistically come up in the world that we are building. So we should know enough about it to maybe, not get the Puerto Rican flag wrong.
Right. Yeah, a blunder. Totally.
Like things like that. Like I think that because that was the context of the conversation was that company Sweet Baby Inc., which is, by the way, terrible name still.
Awful.
Also terrible name. Like uniquely bad names this episode.
Yeah, awful name. Just awful. And people were pretty upset about our laissez-faire attitude towards them. But my whole thing is like that these are voluntary associations. Like it doesn't mean that we have to like the outcome, but it's not fascistic when you have when there's voluntary associations and then people buy your product. So
the things that people choose to latch onto as mega important while just completely.
Dude, I'm sure those guys suck. In fact, one of them I remember going after Gene when Gene was first on Sacred Symbols Plus. But I try not to like look at it through that lens. It's not really that important. I hate a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like there's
Sweet Baby.
I can name for you a long litany of people I hate. It's like, I don't know. Is that really that useful for you?
I just wish people's priorities were Sweet Baby Inc. isn't raising your retirement age, like relax.
Yeah, totally.
It's fine.
Totally. I believe that the thing that bums me out, I think, is that this racial refocus specifically has made me think it's like if a person's blackness or Puerto Ricanness or whatever is important, then is my whiteness important? Like, is this something I should be focused on? Like it's very unnatural. It's like, because I don't care. Like,
right, yeah.
And people would say like, oh, it's because white people are the dominant culture or you lack culture or whatever. It's like, no, we all come from somewhere. I just don't really I don't want that to be important.
I don't know. I think the argument, and again, this is delving into territory that, like, I don't know, like I'm not necessarily super educated on this or anything.
Okay.
But I would say, like I'm white. Like Spaniards are like they're white. Like Benjamin Franklin probably wouldn't have considered me white, but like there are, I am a white person, but I'm Puerto Rican as well. Like there's a distinction there, and I would say that you're white, but you're Italian. You know what I mean? Like and that's something that probably plays into your personality in some way, right? That plays into your life.
And it does it's funny you say that, because it gets into a conversation I have very unpopularly with my very matriarchal Italian family, where I'm like, can we lose the obsession with a place none of us have any idea about and have bastardized to such a degree? Like, yeah, like my mom's parents' generation were connected, and there were people in the mafia, and like their parents came over, and like all the rest. But I'm like, it seems like arbitrary. So you're right, because it does have a huge effect on us. But to me, I actually am cognizant of that in my life, where they're like, yeah, we're Italian. And I'm like, no, we're not. Like we are, in the sense that like that's where our family came from 100 years ago. But
I
don't know dick about any of that stuff. I love the food, but if we went over there and saw our cousins, it's like, we don't know each other. Like we don't have a kindred connection because we didn't come up together.
No, but that in and of itself is an interesting story thread that wouldn't exist were you not Italian.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Like that's what I'm saying. It's like you could write a character like that, and you could be like, who's Italian, but he's like, we're not. And that would be a functionally interesting, perspective to have that otherwise wouldn't be there if it was just like, if somebody just didn't bother to research or ask any questions at all. Like, I don't know. I just think there are multitudes, like the person, like the Walt Whitman quote, it's like,
totally.
There's a lot of facets that anybody could delve into that plays into, who a person is and like what that means and like how that might affect you and whether or not that's important to you. Whether or not that's even important to you is an interesting aspect of it too. Like, I'm very cognizant of this too. With like, I personally like I work with Derek and Sweeney. They're both black, and they there's a big difference between an African American and an African. Like those are vastly different cultural places. Those are vastly different like existences in a way that would probably be shocking to a lot of people who might not even have that intrinsic familiarity with the fact that those are even. I know people who probably wouldn't even consider those things separate things. Like just because they it's not something that they think about, and it's not something that you really should. It's not it's not important to you. But it's interesting there's the differences there.
Definitely, but I'd also argue that it's intersectionality that puts them together. Like it's
no,
actually.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I would agree.
yeah.
I totally. That's what I'm saying. It's like I do think the focus on white, black, Asian is less interesting and less important to me than Nigerian or like Czechoslovakian or Swedish or like that's the kind of thing that I know there's probably an argument there that like divides people or whatever. But like, I would argue it kind of doesn't. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like the more you kind of break those things up and the less you feel like there's this kind of amorphous blob of like white, like what the fuck, dude? Like I have nothing in common with like an Irishman or like a fucking Scottish person or like a Brit. Just because our skin colors are just because our skin color is the same. But I do think there is interesting things to be gleaned from, culture. And I think culture is more important, I guess, to like what you are than your skin color for sure. And
Definitely.
I think that's really what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I think it's well said. And that it gets, I admit, it gets into my fantasy, my long held fantasy about America, that it would become a fundamentally multicultural place that was deeply American, where like people came here and only kept a small piece of where they came from, whatever that might be, your food, your language, whatever, but didn't erect a parallel existence that is differentiated from where you're coming to. Right. And so the only way we can get to that is for us to just throw off these shackles. And maybe it's easiest for people that have been here longest or families have been here longest to say like, we want that, but I don't know, man. We're totally off topic. It doesn't matter, but I love this conversation just because it's vital, like the way we look at ourselves, the way we know ourselves. And I don't think I'm ever going to be comfortable with reducing myself to my race personally. I just don't think I'm going to be capable of doing that. But I understand that other people are different, and that's totally fine. I just don't want that. Yeah, I find that fundamentally negative, I guess. I guess that's the weird thing is I think it's negative.
I think you would see that transition into that. You would see that more broad adoption of American first if people were optimistic about America, and there really aren't many reasons to be. At least like from the perspective of somebody who grew up,
I agree,
in the time that I grew up. You kind of saw a lot of people. I don't know. You saw that the concept of the American dream kind of like not really work out for a lot of people, and even just like a lot of lies. It was like, oh yeah, go to college. It'd be a great investment. And now it's like it costs more. Like a college costs more than a house used to. You know what I mean? It's fucking crazy. So like, I don't know. It's a very different world, and people are like kind of nihilistic and disillusioned, and because of that, there's not really this desire to identify primarily as America, because like, I mean, or as American, because it's just not, it's not a place that feels like it really wants them in the first place. And that's not even necessarily from like minorities or anything like that. It's just from your average fucking person. Like your average citizen feels that way at this point.
I do agree with you that the malaise is deep and real and meaningful and true. And I take it from me, dude. I was in 12th grade when 9/11 happened. I graduated college and the recession happened, Right. Like people my age got really fucked up too, but it's hard for me to totally, it's myopic in a way, because people can be like, yeah, it's just a series of dice rolls and all the rest. And I'm like, yeah, it's true, but it's hard for me to discount that I got here. And this isn't like a huge place, but it's pretty awesome. And I left college in debt with nothing. And that can only really happen here. Like, it's pretty rare,
right?
Comparably, for it to happen in most other places. And I want people, the other side of the coin you're describing to me, Chris, is like, I get it. The disenchantment, the missing, and all the dice rolls you're not going your way. One dice roll would have gone wrong and I wouldn't have been here, right? And that's true. It's a lot of luck. I've never hid from that. People can say whatever they want about whoever, but it's like, I always said, like, dude, a massive part of my rise was luck. Right? It's also skill. It's also timing. Two things I really can't control in one way. Let's say 1.5. You can kind of control timing, but it bums me out to put in too negative a word when I just want people to know, like, they too could do whatever. It's just like, I know it's easier said than done. Dude, everything's easier said than done. I don't know. Good, Chris. I'm sorry, Dustin. Do you have anything you want to add to this before we move on?
This was many sections of the conversation earlier, but you reminded me of the episode of Sopranos where they finally go to Italy and they're all excited to go to the motherland. And then they get there and Paulie, like, they don't like the food, and he's drinking the coffee and he tries to say hello to the Italian guys and they just don't.
Yeah, it's like buongiorno, and he doesn't ask for like gravy or something like meat. Yeah, that's like so funny.
But it just goes into that whole idea. It's like their identity in that show is so much around being Italian through and through the entire show, and then when they go to Italy, they find out they're like, well. It's kind of eye-opening.
Yeah, it's because they're Italian American.
Right, exactly. And it's funny you bring that up, because that has been something I have brought up in my conversations about, like, let's decouple and become truly American. Yeah. And we can still have like the Italian food and all those things that we pass on, but it really has more to do with family than the lineage itself. Like I brought this up in the past, like, I think that, and my mom talks about this a lot too, that there was a generation of people that came over here, like generations of people that overreacted in one way, where they were like, we want you to be so deeply American that, like, my mom's parents spoke Italian fluently, and they refused to teach her because they're like, we don't want you speaking Italian. We don't want you to know how to speak Italian. Like, you should speak English. And that was the whole thing. And that's like one massive overreaction. And then the other massive overreaction is like the essentialism of never being part of the group and isolating and further isolating and subdividing and so on and so forth. And that shit sucks. So it's somewhere in the middle.
It's a balance, man.
Medium. Yeah.
It's a balance, because I remember, because my dad's kind of like that. He's very American, it's very, very, but that also comes from a time, he's old. He remembers like my grandmother getting like harassed for speaking Spanish because she couldn't speak anything else. And so it's like a safety kind of thing where it's like, all right, listen, let's keep this under wraps, which is crazy because it's just Spanish in fucking New York, which is wild. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a multitude of, there's so many threads. This is almost a consolation topic, really.
Yeah, it is. It is. By the way, you were talking about being white, but being Hispanic. Isn't the whole like Mediterranean vibe? Doesn't that come from like the remnants of the Muslim like occupation, like the Moors of the Iberian Peninsula? I think that's like where, but that is what it is, isn't it? That like that like some people have that like a darker hue. I thought that's what it was, but I could be wrong, because there was a time when the Iberian Peninsula was like a Muslim kingdom, I think, like an Islamic kingdom.
Maybe,
and I think that's the remnants of it, but I could be wrong.
The thing, I mean, a lot of it is just kind of, I mean, we talked about Benjamin Franklin earlier. Like, Benjamin Franklin didn't consider Italians white. Like these kind of things are, largely it's very nebulous and very kind of not. It's not really important at all.
Or Catholics in many regards.
It blows my, like the Irish were. It makes me laugh so hard that the Irish were considered swarthy. That's like one of the funniest historical facts that I think I've ever learned. It was like even the Irish weren't white enough. That's crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's all, I don't know. These things develop and change over time. Ideally, we get to a point where like that kind of thing doesn't matter. But I mean, that'll take time. And there's still, I don't know. It wasn't even that long ago historically that, the 60s were not 100 years ago. There's still some holdover systems and all that stuff.
Sure.
So like we got
That's
it.
True.
Unfortunately, I don't know if we'll ever see that in our lifetimes, but I think I'm hopeful for the future that will happen at some time.
Yeah, it's it's very interesting. Like, interesting conversation. Thank you for writing in, the great Santini, you started something, a positive dialogue here on Sacred Symbols. All right. Joseph Abraham Lackle? I don't know. Lacle. I've never seen that name before. Dear Sacred Boys, I recently played Sea of Stars and Octopath Traveler 2, and I absolutely love them both. Are there any more retro-style RPGs you guys would recommend? Thanks for everything. I've been a patron for the last 6 months and could not be happier with the content. I want to keep hitting this over and over again with different ideas because though we talk about our old school JRPGs often, Dustin, I've interpreted this recent situation here as like kind of a renaissance. People are opening their minds to role-playing games, it seems like, because of certain products, whether it's recent games like Persona 5, I think it was a big one, obviously, but Final Fantasy XVI more recently, and then Sea of Stars probably as well. I'm wondering if any specific games come to mind for you. I ask you this because I've been watching Micah play Persona 3 Portable on Switch. And it's funny how I didn't know this because I only played Persona 4. I didn't realize like how much they shared with each other visually, sounds and menus and themes. Something deep to get into here that I'm eyeing because I really did enjoy Persona 4. But for Joseph here, any games you recommend off the back of a Sea of Stars or an Octopath Traveler 2?
So this is a really different game, but I think that's kind of one of the cool aspects of it is check out Undertale. It is RPG light, but what I love about it so much is that it takes some of these RPG norms and flips them on its head, because as advertised, and it's true, is that it's the friendly RPG where you don't have to kill anyone, or you can kill everyone if you want, and it has vastly different outcomes depending on what you decide to do. And no, it's not like some kind of hardcore, super tactical, stat-based RPG. Far from it. But it's a game that has an incredible story with amazing characters and does things in terms of its meta gameplay that I have never seen before. And I know there's a lot of cringy Undertale fans out there. I wish that wasn't the case, but please ignore them and try out the game because it is one of my top 5 games of all time, I think. And I think everyone should at least check it out or try it because it's so incredibly good.
Evolving off that question comes tender, crisp bacon cheddar ranch. By the way, I just hate ranch so much. I hate it.
I'm not a ranch person.
It just doesn't, ugh.
You know, like buttermilk?
No.
What is buttermilk?
I don't know.
Can someone tell me that? What is it?
I don't know.
I like it in pancakes, I think.
Yeah, buttermilk pancakes.
I think.
What
I don't
is
know what it
buttermilk?
is.
But
But
look it up. Tell me what it is.
Just because
Is it cream, butter or something?
dude, in LA, they
Butter-
give you such an unnecessary amount of ranch with everything. It's
Ugh.
It's really
Ranch is so
upsetting.
gross, dude. I hate it.
fermented dairy milk
that sounds fucking terrible.
Okay.
made with cultured cream.
Well, nonetheless. Oh,
Ooh,
right.
I'll give you some cultured cream.
Yeah.
let me tell you.
Whoa.
Tender crisp bacon cheddar ranch wrote in and said, "Hi, everybody. I've been getting back into playing JRPGs more over the past year, and I found that one of the common features of modern JRPGs is the addition of post-game content, bonus dungeons, extra bosses, etc. And I find myself not liking how content is gated off until after the main story. I very rarely have any urge to go beat optional bosses or get ultimate weapons that only unlock after I've already saved the world. What are your thoughts on the post-game content in JRPGs or in games generally?" I loved your question here, Tender Crisp, because I tend to agree. And I've noticed this as well. I noticed this with Tales of Arise specifically. I like the idea I love the idea in games, all games, not just JRPGs, but games that require side questing or nonlinearity or whatever to have points of no return that are explicit. I don't think there's anything wrong with a menu popping up and being like, you go beyond this point and the game's over. And at that point, everything you can do in the game should be available to you. Because you want to culminate with the big finale and feel like you're walking away from something, not being like, oh, I didn't fight an optional boss to get the best armor, even though I have already beaten the game. And I just think bouncing people back to that point of no return, which a lot of games do expertly, I think is the ideal. Chris, where are you on post-game optional content? A lot of people are really upset about, and we're going to talk a little bit about one way it's being delivered, but New Game Plus and all of the rest, where sometimes you have to earn another playthrough. But it should never be necessary to get all the content, and that's another problem with these kinds of games too. But anyway, I'm curious what direction you want to take it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it has to be. I'm kind of on a case by case basis with this, because I generally don't like it. I generally like to, if I beat a game and there's a big cutscene and there's a feeling of finality, I very rarely want to go in and do anything that's really super important or anything that wasn't already there. Like when I was cleaning up the trophies for Spider-Man, that was pretty easy because it was just like, oh, this is stuff that's kind of supplementary anyway. It's kind of extra stuff that was available to me. I just chose not to do it. Not a big deal. But I think where I felt it the most was that those Valkyrie fights in God of War, the original, or not the original, but like the 2018 God of War, where I was just like, well, I just finished this. I don't have any desire to do this. Like, is it even important? Like, I don't know. I don't like that it becomes available to you after you finish it, because it kind of feels like it kind of feels lackluster in comparison to the great finale that you've clearly orchestrated and spent millions of dollars orchestrating to feel resolution heavy. Like it. It's weird. New Game Plus I like, and I actually really liked Alan Wake 2's, which gives you a way different ending, by the way. But, I mean, that's a really specific situation where, like, this is a game I just happen to really love. If a game that I just kind of liked gave me a completely different ending for playing it through completely again, I don't know how I would feel about that. Or if it, like, the real ending necessarily was behind a second playthrough. That would really bother me if the game itself wasn't like up to snuff quality wise, or it didn't resonate with me. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of hypocritical with it, I guess, or very, very picky and choosy about this kind of thing. But generally speaking, as a rule, I would prefer the game be over when the developer makes a big show of telling me that it's over.
Right. That's exactly right. Is that I think you touched on this, which is the players earn resolution. So allowing it to telegraph that, I think is vital. And Dustin, to go over to you, I guess it's not one, but a kind of exception you can imagine to the rule, and what Chris was talking about is there are games where it's fun to go into the world after it's over, but the game knows it's over. And there are examples of that, like where you're talking to everyone and there's a resolution. The townspeople are happy, the world's at peace, and maybe there's like a few things to people to talk to. I want to say Trails of Cold Steel did that. I could be wrong, which is kind of a better thing, as opposed to you get like a pop-up and it's like congratulations, you'll go through the credits. This is very classic presentation, right? You'll beat a game, go through the credits, you'll be brought back to a screen in game, and it'll pop up and say, congratulations, you've beaten, whatever. Here, make sure to do this, and this. There are still things to do. Like Horizon has that kind of screen. And I'm like, yeah, but it's a little bit, but then I think about Fallout 3. Do you remember the controversy about Fallout 3 about how people might not remember this, but because they patched it pretty quickly, but Fallout 3, when it originally came out, had an ending where it wouldn't let you go back. Like once you beat the game, like it was just, you were committed to that, and there was no no post game content, and people didn't like that. So I guess there are exceptions to the rule. What do you think?
Yeah, it really depends on the type of game, because I think you bring up Bethesda games in all Skyrim, Fallout, those games. Finishing the main quest wasn't the ultimate goal. It was about being in this world and doing cool and interesting things. And so absolutely, I was compelled once I completed the main quest to go out and do all this other stuff, because arguably it's not post-game content. It's just content in the game. Yeah. So I guess you could say that maybe that doesn't even really apply. But I think about Final Fantasy, like I just finished Final Fantasy VII Remake. I looked at my stats. I did about half of the side quests. And I was thinking, man, I could go back and do those, but it's kind of, I don't feel compelled to, like, other than I kind of got what I was looking for out of the playthrough. I guess it's a little different since it's a replay, but I know myself personally, especially if it's a good RPG now, when I'm enjoying it for the first time, that I should do as many side quests as I feel compelled to while I'm playing the game, because once I hit credits, my desire to do anything else is going to go way down completely, just because I have that sense of finality.
Mhm.
And the way my mind works is that, I don't know, I try not to look at games as just check marks to move on to the next one as quick as possible. But at the same time, when I've completed and I've got a full, well-rounded experience of something, unless I'm looking for, if I was to go for a platinum, which I haven't done in a few years now or something like that, I think I'm kind of satisfied with this. I could be putting this time into another satisfying experience. I feel satiated, so I don't need to do post-game content. And sometimes there are cases where people make the argument like, man, the post-game content is even better than the actual game content. And so maybe that's a bit of a different story, but I'm kind of cool with a mix of golden path and side stuff. Again, it really just depends on the type of game.
To me, this ties really neatly and unintentionally, but neatly into what I was saying about my Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown playthrough, where I'm engineering it so that it ends with me having done everything, knowing that I don't really have to play that way, but trying to get that experience out of it nonetheless, knowing myself. Because you're right. Like, if I were to just be like, fuck it, and then I went and just beat the game, I would probably lose 50% of my will to play it after that, at least. Where I'd be like, well, I don't even really know why I'm doing this. Yeah.
Dude, it's a double-edged sword, though, because I was thinking about Final Fantasy VII, in that, no spoilers, you have that point of no return. And it's at such an interesting part of the game where you want to see and how they're going to do stuff next. You know it's going to be so cool. And they're like, but you can't come back if you want to do all these side stuff. You got to do it now. And there's more side stuff than ever at this point in the game. And like, fuck, I don't want to do that side stuff. I'm so invested in the story. So that can be frustrating.
JPIC wrote in, said, hey, SS boys, this is my first time writing into the show, and I look forward to every podcast each week. Keep up all the great work that you guys do. Thank you. My question is about balancing several games simultaneously. Titles such as Grand Blue Fantasy and Persona 3 are releasing a day apart, and Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin are slated to be released on the same day. This poses a problem, as these are all games I'm very interested in playing on day one, but I only have so much time in the day, preventing me from committing to all of them. I'm curious to hear how you guys balance your gaming time with multiple games. Do you have a schedule on what day you'll play a particular game and then alternate between the games you are balancing? Do you stick to one game until completion? Or are you purely chaotic, playing whatever game you like and do not care? I'm the anti-chaos gamer personally, especially in my post-media world where I don't have to play a lot of things and I'm not constantly getting bombarded with games. I like to beat the games I play. If I don't beat a game, I really, really didn't like it, or like it just was not doing it for me. So what I do, Chris, is I balance one 3D game and one 2D or 2D-ish game at a time at the most, but typically just play one game at a time. I have a hard time mixing in two like open world games, or an open world game and a shooter or something. I don't know. Control schemes, you get to just kind of default to them, and I don't like fucking around with that too much. So that's the way I typically play. How are you doing it these days?
Yeah, I'm pretty chaotic still. I'll dive into a game for maybe 2 hours or something, and I'll put it down, or I'll go into my backlog and be like, I feel like giving this a try again or whatever. But generally speaking, I don't juggle multiple types of the same kind of game. That is at least one element of structure that I have. Like right now, I'm working my way through the Spyro games. I've talked about that before, about the going through the Reignited trilogy, trying to platinum those 3 games. But those are so simplistic and they're so collective. They're just, I can listen to music or like podcasts, or even just like have videos playing in the background and pay attention to those more than, the game doesn't demand a lot of you to pay attention to. So I can juggle something like that with maybe a narrative heavy experience, or like open world something, or like a more contemporary, like modern big game. Maybe I can do 3 if it's a game that I'm trying to platinum, a game that I've already played, so I don't have to pay that much attention to, and one that's new to me. But that's as far as it'll go. It's usually 3 single player games at any given time, with vastly different play styles and vastly different levels of familiarity, and vastly different goals between them, and at least one multiplayer game just for at night when I'm unwinding. Right now it's the finals, but like sometimes it'll be something else. But yeah, generally speaking, like an example, like a couple days ago, I went through the first few chapters of the original Gears of War because I had like an itch to play them. And I did, and it was like, this is fun. Okay, cool. And then I went to Spyro, and I still haven't picked what game I'm gonna fully chew on next. But I'm not trying to play more than 3 single player games at any given time. That's just too much, I think, for me.
Where are you on this, Dustin? How are you balancing things these days?
Yeah, somewhat like Chris in that I totally relate to having the multiplayer type game on the side as well. That's what I've been doing with Brad and playing Elden Ring together a few nights a week has been really fun. Man, this case with Grand Blue Fantasy and Persona 3 is gonna be tough. Mainly in that what I'm hoping is the case is that sometimes with games you can kind of play for a few hours and then feel satiated, and that you could keep going, but the fun factor kind of just wanes as you play and play and play. And so it's a nice opportunity to switch between 2 titles. It's a bit of a stretch with Grand Blue Fantasy and Persona 3. They both play very differently, but they're both kind of the same anime type JRPG aesthetic. I'm hoping that that's going to be the case for me with these 2 games. And 2, I need to look into it. I know Grand Blue Fantasy has a lot of multiplayer stuff. Brad and I played the demo together and had a lot of fun. I don't know if the campaign is fully multiplayer, but that actually would be awesome, because then it would just would fill that multiplayer slot for me where I'll just play that. Most likely Brad and I together would play through the game, and then Persona 3 would be a game I play on my own, of course. So you got to be careful though that you don't want too much chaos where then you aren't able to finish much of anything because you're just jumping between too many games. And I have 100% done that before, and always something falls by the wayside. So we'll see. I'm so annoyed that Grand Blue Fantasy and Persona 3 are coming out so close together, because they hit the exact, maybe not the exact, but a large amount of the target demographic are interested in both of those games. And so you're making a lot of people pick and choose, which most likely a lot of them are going to pick Persona, I would think. But it's annoying. I wish they were even if it was just a few weeks spaced out would be nice.
You think so? I wonder who's going to sell better. Grand Blue seems to be somewhat substantial. People have been waiting for it for a long time. But I think Persona obviously is a huge name, and it's not just a re-release of a port. It's a remake. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, it's interesting to hear you guys' different philosophies here. Jonathan Sherlin wrote in, said, "Hey, can you all explain why game leaks are such a terrible thing for a company? I completely understand why getting employees' personal information is terrible. That's obvious. But is it really so bad to see an early build of a game? Does that really hurt sales later on? It just seems to me that most people that buy video games are, for the most part, unaware of leaks. Then there's gamers that might be aware but don't want spoilers, so will stay away from looking at the leaks. And finally, there are those that don't mind spoiling themselves. But it seems to me that there is this impression that gamers will see an early build of a game and assume that's how the final product is going to be. And I'm just wondering, is that true? If you're enough of a gamer to be aware of leaks, wouldn't this be something you would be aware of, that early versions of the game don't necessarily represent the finished product? Just wondering what you guys think about this. I kind of feel like you'd be right if not for the way people reacted to Wolverine recently.
Right. Because
people were acting, and the way people reacted to Grand Theft Auto 6 as well, a couple of years ago. Like, there seems to actually be a very, maybe it's willingness and part of the fanboy wars and the console wars and all that kind of stuff, but this kind of willingness to just be like, oh, this looks like shit, it's going to look like shit. It's like, you don't understand that the game is built and then made nicer and sharper and better and more detail as time goes on. Well, no, a lot of people don't realize that, I don't think.
There's this reminds me of like a famous George Carlin quote where, like, he said, I think it's like, think of how stupid the average person is, and then realize that half of them are stupider than that. There are a lot of people who just either are unwilling to understand how games work or how they're made, or people who just don't care. And I know that that's baffling to people who are aware. You know, it's you almost can't fathom how people can't understand this basic philosophy of just like, oh yeah, it's not done. But But there are a lot of people who just don't know enough about the space, but who know enough to comment, who like just know like the bare necessities. Like, oh, hey, I know what a game is. I know people I know people are excited for this. But I don't know, man, you'd be surprised at how much information, or not necessarily how much information, but how much basic knowledge is kind of lost on the average consumer about the process of making video games. Like, I remember just being completely mystified by what video games even were. Like, when I was a kid, I had no concept of like what these things even did or what they were or like how they worked at all. Like, I didn't care about, I don't know, when I was like 8 or 9 or 10, I didn't know what a developer was. I wasn't thinking about that at all. I was just like, oh, here's this weird interactive medium that I'm not 100% sure isn't magic, because what the fuck is this? And so, like, I don't know, you get yourself familiarized with like the industry, and that's kind of how you learn about these things. But I mean, there's a lot of people who are only cursorily familiar with the industry, or very, very shallowly familiar with the industry, where they just know like, okay, well, they make it, but like, surely it's polished for the most part, the whole time. Like, surely you don't like make a bad version of Kratos, because I guess if you don't know how games work, why would you assume that? You know what I mean? Like, why would you assume that there would be a low poly version of everything? Like, why would you assume that the map renders differently based on like how far away you are to any given object of detail if you're not familiar with like how engines work, or if you haven't observed your games that closely? I don't know, man. I know you say you're wondering if that's true. I assure you it is. It might not be as common as some people make it out to be. I do think there's a larger understanding of how video games work today than there used to be. But that doesn't stop people from being ignorant about the processes. And that much is clear from the GTA leaks, the Wolverine leaks. It's kind of wild, honestly.
What do you think, Dustin?
I think that absolutely, Chris, people are not, or are just, I don't want to say they're stupid, but a lot of times it's a lot of ignorance in terms of seeing a game early and not understanding why it's feature complete, or why the frame rate's bad, or the textures look weird. Or one thing too is there was a thing about like AI voices that was in Liza P in one of the early demos that slipped through. Mm-hmm. And there was like a big concern about are they going to use this weird robotic voice in the game? It's like, no. I mean, I guess it's possible that, and sometimes stuff like that happens where things get left in, but not intentionally usually. But I think the other argument, and I can see two sides of this, is that there's a big argument about leaks and company morale, where you think about if you're planning a surprise party for somebody and you're putting all these details together and you have this masterfully coordinated to present it in the most satisfying, exciting way possible, and then someone just goes and texts the person and tells them everything, then that's going to suck. That feels really bad. Right. And so from the standpoint of a developer, where they're crafting a way to present something to an audience a certain way, to present it in a certain way, I can understand that level of disappointment when someone uploads a 240p video on Twitter of your trailer that looks like ass and, stuff like that. I can understand that. At the same time, too, I think that shouldn't prevent journalists from reporting on things either, because that's the way it goes.
Because that's reality. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. As long as it's not ill-begotten from them, that's it. I mean, that's basically it. I agree. I think there's so many ways you can pull at this. I won't belabor the point other than to say, I think that there's a lot of power in first impressions. And I also think that there's just a lot of power in initiative and having the initiative. You like, the one thing you can say about Insomniac and the leak is they have no more initiative. Like and what I mean by that is it's not their turn to really go and tell you something we don't know. And that sucks. But that is reality. And that's going to be true for them for a long ass time, which is probably pretty deflating. But yeah, I think that Chris, I think you said it well. There are people that don't get it. There are people that do get it. I've said in the past, I've totally admitted it. When I first got into the industry as an 18-year-old and 19-year-old, I didn't know nearly as much about games as I knew when I was 25 or 30. And I'm almost embarrassed by how little I knew when I look back and how I survived, but you learn, you learn over 22 years, you learn. And, so Jonathan, I think you're right and you're wrong, just in the sense that it's just out of our control because there are so many different people that are going to interpret the stuff in different ways, but it's a good question. Greg wrote in with the final inquiry. He says, hey guys, should reviewers and final scores take into account the monetization aspect of a game? The new Like a Dragon game locks New Game Plus behind a paid upgrade that surely should penalize the final verdict, or any other egregious monetization. If no one is willing to go on the offense for these tactics and don't vote with our wallets, we only have ourselves to blame. Well, two different things I would say, Greg, off the start is voting with your wallet is one thing. Going on the offense against it is a totally different thing. And I was seeing this circulate, and I'm wondering, Dustin, let's stick with you. Do you feel like this New Game Plus behind a paywall, is this a bridge too far? Is this another example of kind of forced monetization on people that should expect to get something for free? Or not for free, as part of the cost of the product?
Yeah, I think that because it's such a standard feature that is included with games, to go and then monetize that afterwards does feel really gross and slimy. So I think it totally sucks. As far as reviewers and final scores taking monetization into account, absolutely. I think that that's a huge part of it. We've seen cases though where publishers have wised up to this. I think, Chris, what was it, with Crash Team Racing, right?
Oh yeah.
They added it in afterwards.
Yeah, like a month afterwards or something like that, or like 2 months after. I can't remember. They had already received all of the goodwill from the reviews, and then they just shoehorned it in.
Right. I think
crazy.
There's an element where think about a game like Resident Evil 4 Remake. There is monetization in the PlayStation Store where you can buy the different weapon level ups or whatever. You can buy stuff to enhance, to make the game easier. That kind of stuff where you can totally have a normal standard experience with the game and you can pay for an option to make the game easier. I think it's dumb, but I wouldn't take that away as long as the standard experience of the game is unaffected. Where in this Yakuza situation, I would say right now, a standard experience is that New Game Plus is included, or at the very least added later. And so to say, oh, we're going to start charging for that right off the bat, that feels gross to me, just based on the standard aspects of what you would expect from an RPG like this. So I would think it would be worth taking into account. Absolutely.
Chris, where are you on this New Game Plus Yakuza or Like a Dragon, putting it behind a paywall? Do you care?
Yeah, I mean, I don't care interpersonally, but I do think I'm not going to play it. Probably. But this is it's just tacky to me. Like, I just don't know why you would do this to a franchise that has so much good standing. Like, people love Yakuza. It's exploded in recent years because of, I mean, a number of factors. All of those games being on Game Pass, I think was a huge boon for them. It even got me to try it, and I liked Yakuza Like a Dragon quite a bit. But yeah, just something about paying, charging for something that is so expected as a standard. I don't vibe with that at all. I think it feels really gross. I think it feels nickel and dimey for pretty much no reason. I don't understand outside of the obvious monetary gain. I just feel like this is kind of a blemish that I feel like you'd want to avoid when marketing your game. I don't know why you would willingly do this.
Maybe it's just it could just be. I'm curious. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was gonna say I'm curious as the people who would even do this in the first place. Why would you pay for that?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say in some sense is this could just be how far can we push this? They're going to push it as far as they possibly can. So They're already pushing it to early access. That's why I didn't play Prince of Persia. When I realized I could have bought it early, like I realized with 36 hours left or whatever, and pay $10 and just get it early. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
At least not for this game. If The Last of Us Part 3 is like, get it 3 days early, I'd be like, okay, whatever you want, Mr. Druckmann. But not with this game. So yeah. Mike has been playing Like a Dragon on Xbox Series X, and it is very charming and interesting.
Yeah. So
been checking that out a little bit. Well, boys, it's good to convene with you today. A more appropriate, I don't know, it's going to be about a 4-hour podcast. Not so bad. It's good to be here with you guys today. Let's go around and say goodbye to everyone. Chris, goodbye to you. I hope you have a good rest of your day. Formulate new plans and situate yourself as you said you wanted to do early in the show.
Yeah, a lot of planning, but hopefully I'll get some game time in at some point today. I want to play something. It's been a minute.
Dustin, goodbye to you.
Yeah, goodbye to you. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Chris. It's been a nice, almost 4 hours now, I think.
Almost.
Hanging out, talking about games. And I had a little cheesy moment, but I was thinking the other day, I was like, man, we're doing a live show in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
That is so fucking cool. And I'm so incredibly excited. And I'm so thankful to the audience for allowing us giving us the ability to do this type of stuff. It's so cool. It's I'm just so excited. It's going to be such a fun time for us all to be together. And I'm always thankful. It's never lost on me, especially when we get to do extra cool stuff. I always want to take a moment and reflect on how lucky we are, how blessed we are.
Well, let's see how those tickets sell first, and we'll just talk about how blessed we are. All right?
That's true. Yeah.
You guys better buy those tickets.
Hold up for a sec.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, guys, good job this week. Thank you for being here. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. Couldn't do without you over on Patreon. Early ad-free access, patreon.com/lastdaymedia. Merch, stickers, t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, etc., and so on. Lastdaymedia.store. Shipped right here from my house in Virginia. We'll see you next time for more. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Collins Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.